The 11 Bang Bang Reload Show starts now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that show. I'm Garrett. You're watching the 11 Bang Bang Reload Show, and we have some very special guests here tonight. Of course, down here below me, we have Jake from Everything Black Powder. It's been people have asked me to have him on this show for quite a while because he's got people really like his channel. Over here to my right, we have Blackie Thomas. You all know him. He's been here before, and we're very grateful that he's back. And down here on the corner, we have Snapper from
Hey guys.
Snapper's Antique Fire, basically our co-host. So can you not hear us, Jake? Have we lost sound? How about now? I hear you. How about now? He'll get his sound going here in a second, guys. While he's working on that.
Remember last time we did that with me? I had to hop out and re-link back in. Sometimes your intro may have booted him out somehow.
It may have. Let me go ahead, guys. I'm going to text him right.
All right. Well, what do you guys do about that? I guess. So, what have you been up to, Blackie? Any cool new toys? Can you hear me, Blackie?
No, is all of our sounds messed up?
Yeah. Ah, crap. Can you hear me, Garrett?
Yeah, I hear you. You and me are the only two. All right. Here, I texted him. Maybe he can hear him and get him a text.
Oh, no.
Anyway, guys, so we're going to go through while we're waiting on that.
Man, I could barely hear you guys. I got the volume.
There you are. You're coming in. I can barely hear you. Blackie, can you hear us? I don't think he can hear us.
Yeah, I don't think you can hear us.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, he can hear us.
Hear him talk.
Yes, we're all talking. I can hear y'all in and out, though.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go through while he's coming back in, guys. He's going to leave and come back in. We have Subaru's in here and AR American. Hi. He says hello.
Hey, brother.
Hear you. Now I can.
All right, now we hear you.
All right. We're just going through who all's here. Gunsmith 4570. Stephen M. The Mountain Man is here. Hey, good to see you. Spoobaroo, is that how you say that name? Says, I'm from Jake's crew, and I'm curious what's the origin of the 11 Bang Bangs name. We'll get to that in a minute. Bullseye's in. Grey Wolf said, man, I'm just driving away from the range. Been checking out a Uberti 1862 police, so no talking for me, but I'm listening while I drive. You will be very interested with what we got coming up pretty soon. Grey Wolf is in, and let's see, anybody? Garza Vlogs is here. And Guns of the West. Hey, Dustin, he's in. Franklin Horse. And the Saboteur 45 is in. Duke cannot be here tonight, guys. He's feeling a little under the weather, so it's just going to be us, but I think we can handle it all right. Let's start off with Snapper. We are awfully glad to see you back. It's been a long time.
Thanks. I'm glad to be back. I'm hoping my world will get back to normal soon.
Yep. And I'll just go ahead and answer this question before we get into our guests here, but we had the guy from Jake's crew asked, how did 11 Bang Bang get its name? It's because this channel actually is my brother's channel. I'm just filling in while he's on deployment. But he actually signed into his first YouTube account in the back of a Bradley in Syria in a combat zone. And they asked him to come up with a name, and that was all he could think of at the time was 11 Bang Bang, stands for 11 Bravo Infantry. And that just became the name of the channel, and that's what it's been. He will be back, by the way, before very long, guys, and he'll be seeing a lot more of him. But anyway. So anyway, our special guest tonight is Jake from Everything Black Powder. And so we know you make black powder and you shoot flintlocks and cap and balls and everything that we all love. How did you get started in the black powder world? Was that something you started as a kid or what?
Oh, I bought my first black powder pistol when I was 16 or 17. It was an 1860 Army. Mm-hmm. And as far as why, I don't know. I just thought it was neat and it was something I wanted to do, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay. So did you have any movies or favorite shows that influenced you? Or?
Oh, well, I know it might sound cliche and cheesy, but I did grow up watching the old Davy Crockett's with Fess Parker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
I know.
It's not cheesy. That's kind of how most of us.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I made a video about that not too long ago. If you didn't see that, where we found the rock from the first scene of,
I did.
and I was standing there thinking about it. I was like, all these people I know on YouTube, all these black powder channels, if they hadn't made that, who knows who would be here today? You know, just how important that film is to, or that TV series, I guess, is to black powder and what we do today. You got started with that too, didn't you, Blackie? Can you hear us? He's gonna back out and back in.
Ah, great.
But that's all right. And Turkey Creek 1823 is in. So why don't you tell us, Jake, about how you got started in this YouTube deal? Can you hear us?
I had to refresh because it'll get where it's jumping in and out, and I can't understand you, so I have to refresh every so often. He may need to do that as well.
Yep, Jake, you might have to bounce in and out.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up tonight, guys. It might just be the internet. We got 35 people in here. But I was asking Blackie, is that's how you got started too, basically, was with Davy Crockett? Can you walk front
watching Davy Crockett when I was little, it really was a big influence on me. And the Daniel Boone thing. And of course, it just inspired me to get into it. So when I saw, actual flintlocks and cap locks and stuff like that, I was always attracted to them. I bought my first black powder, which was a brass frame, 44 caliber, kind of like a Griswold, that was made by Navy Arms, called a Reb revolver in 1976 from Otasco. And that was my first black powder revolver. And that started me on the trail.
Is that the one that you have in your video that you showed, Blackie?
Hold on, let me refresh.
Oh, the internet must be bad tonight, but we do have 30 people in here, guys, and that's pretty good for this show. We're going to bring him back in. We'll get leveled out here in a minute.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Now, Jake, are you still here?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yep. Good. So you're kind of the special guest tonight because you've never been on here before.
Yeah,
but
I think the internet's kind of rough tonight.
Yeah. you got started.
I hear about one word. I hear like da and y'all come back.
But you said you started with an 1860 Army. What was your first long gun, black powder?
My first long gun. I think it was a Traditions. They call it a deer stalker or a deer hunter or something. It was a flint. It's a flintlock. It's a half stock flintlock. It was a 50 cal. And I didn't have real black powder then. All I could get was Pyrodex. And I always wanted a flintlock from watching Davy Crockett. But the first few times I shot that thing, I thought, man, this stuff is for the birds. They're not really, they're really serious about the delay between the hammer and it going off. And they're like, what a joke. I don't know how those guys hit anything. And I was
shooting Pyrodex.
I was, I don't know, I was probably 18 or 19 or something. And I was complaining to one of my uncles who has got a lot of black powder guns and been shooting flintlocks forever. And I said, man, I don't know what the deal is. I just can't hit anything with this. And he says, well, what's going on? I said, well, the delay. He goes, well, you just can't flinch. You just can't flinch. I said, Bob, I mean, I gotta sit there. I can smoke a cigarette in the amount of time it's going to take for that thing to go off.
Yeah.
And finally, after we go back and forth, he says, well, what are you using? I said, I'm using Pyrodex. He goes, oh, well, there's your problem.
Working like a fuse.
I said, well, what do I need? He goes, well, you have to use real black powder. And I says, well, do you have some? He goes, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And he gave me a horn. I still have it, with some old DuPont black powder. And I loaded the thing up and shot it. And I thought, man, I have been doing it wrong my entire life.
That's pretty funny because I think everybody that has one of those, a flintlock, has tried Pyrodex.
Yeah, everybody's tried it, right? And it all ends up the same.
And it never works. It's pretty rough. I can tell you, Duke had a brown Bess, and he could tell this story better than me, but he was trying to hunt prairie dogs with a brown Bess, and he was trying to shoot Pyrodex, and it wasn't working out too well. I don't think.
That's tough.
That would be.
But if he ever connected, it'd be a pink mist.
Yeah, I think he has after he actually had killed some, but it was after he finally switched over to GoX.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I got some DuPont cans back here, and that stuff is old, but it still, it still works. So you obviously you went from Pyrodex to DuPont. When did you got into GoX? I would assume next, or did you go straight Swiss?
GoX, and I ran GoX for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I've been a little critical of Swiss throughout the years, but you're not going to find any better powder out there than Swiss.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the best it's the best I've ever found, that's for sure. And I've been making my own now for a few years, and I still can't make it that good.
You made a video not too long, or it's probably been a year ago now or so, where you took a bottle of Swiss, you said it's better than this, and you threw it away, and I felt slightly called out. No, I'm just kidding. But I like Swiss, but it's so hard to get a hold of anything.
I don't think I said it was better than Swiss. I think I mentioned something about it being really expensive and threw it over my shoulder.
Well, I think you said it was faster than Swiss. It was your CIA.
Oh yeah, it's faster, yes, but or at least just as fast, but certainly not as clean.
Yeah. Wow. Well, sorry if I put words in your mouth there.
That's quite all right. Quite all right. I don't want to get, because people are weird about Swiss, man. You say too many weird things about Swiss, they'll start making angry comments about you.
Oh yeah,
well, when the black powder silhouette rifle, the sharps and all like that, those matches popped up, and Swiss became the choice to go into cartridges. You didn't say jack about it, because that was the powder. I remember articles coming out where major competitors were wanting to know, could they buy like the 2-year supply that the factory produced just to take to these on-shoots events and the long-range black powder silhouette. They didn't want you and me to even get that powder. That's for them. This is our powder. Leave it alone. You don't need it in flintlocks. This is for us,
That's funny. No, I wouldn't get on anybody other than, because whatever you got works, and I hate people that gatekeep the black powder community, and a lot of people do it,
Yeah.
And, I always hear things like, you're starting out with Pyrodex, people will chew on you, but everybody starts with Pyrodex and like a cap gun, Exactly. And if you have a brass frame Navy or a 44 caliber Navy, you'll get laughed at, or a tradition style Hawken or something. It's like people don't realize you got to start somewhere. And those are really good guns, in my opinion, especially those tradition style Hawkins.
And how many people that you know of that got started in black powder started with one of those guns that you just listed off right there?
Yes.
Just about it.
Yes, because one, you're not sure, do I want to invest the money or not?
Mm-hmm.
I want to try it out, and it's kind of dirty, and am I going to like it? And I hear about how the guns are going to rust, and can you really hit anything with this? And like you're talking about, I pull the trigger and I wait 5 minutes and it goes bang. Those things, I ain't gonna put a lot in it till I find out I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I've got a lot of cap and ball pistols in particular from people that, they bought it brand new. They bought the kit, with the flask and all that stuff. And they shot it one time. They cleaned it and said, I'm not into this. And then they go, yeah, I'd like to sell it. I don't shoot this thing. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got several that way.
That.
Yep, and that's good for people like us. But I do hate that there is so much gatekeeping in the black powder community, because the more of us and less of them is better, in my opinion. I don't care what it is. So yeah, we were just saying Pyrodex. I don't shoot much Pyrodex, but people would be surprised to know I still shoot it in the inlines, in the modern inline guns we got. But mostly because I still have a lot of it left.
I shoot a lot of Pyrodex in mine because I know what it is. It gives me decent velocity, and I save my black for my flintlock.
Yeah.
So I'm using Pyrodex in my cap and ball. That it's just something I could get easy. I get it local thing relatively cheap, and I save my holy black powder for my flintlock.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, Pyrodex, you better be on cleaning that stuff, because it seems to be more corrosive than the real stuff. in my opinion.
You know,
Yeah.
I have found that Pyrodex's fouling is a lot worse than black powder. You guys notice that?
I have to.
Okay. Because
Everybody's like, it's cleaner, it's easier to clean, but it's not. It's harder to clean, and it rusts my guns faster if you don't get on top of it.
Yeah.
You're talking about Pyrodex?
Yeah. Fouling out faster.
Okay. I went to natural based lube, so I didn't get the petroleum burn problem.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my bores are seasoned because of that. And so I can shoot my 60 Army or my 61 Navy and not clean it for 3 or 4 days, and it ain't rusted. It made a little surface something I can just wipe off. But I don't get and I'm in a humid environment, so I've seasoned my guns, and so that's one of the reasons I've stuck with Pyrodex. You know, I've known guns, man, it just destroyed it.
Yeah.
But I've never had the problem because I always season my stuff, and usually for me, the people that I found that were having trouble were using some sort of Wonder Lube, or it's WD-40 as they're using to clean the guns or whatever. And it just didn't work well together at all.
Speaking of humid environments, I live in Vegas. There's like no humidity here. And the other day we had rain, and all my guns patinaed overnight, like just a lighter color brown overnight.
Jake, you're in the Southwest, aren't you? You're pretty dry climate down there.
Yeah, but I think it was last summer. We had a couple good monsoons, and I had some of my firearms in my trunk, which I keep them there. And they were in there for a week or so, and they weren't dirty. You know, I always clean my guns as soon as I get home, you know. But I left them in there for a week or so, and I pulled them out, and man, I was really alarmed because they were already starting to rust, you know, just from sitting in my car because we had a couple days where it rained pretty good, you know.
Yep. I'll tell you a little anecdote about that. It depends on where you're at and what the year is, because a year and a half ago, we went to Wyoming and we shot with Duke, and we shot his 45, and we shot probably 200, 250 rounds of black powder, you know, a mix, but mostly black powder, even lube with just ALOX black powder. And we came back about, 8 months later, and we filmed again. And he picked that thing up, and I thought, man, that's a little stiff. What's going on? He's like, oh, yeah, I hadn't cleaned that thing in 8 months.
Oh.
And it was not rusted. It was not rusted. It just felt like it was a little looby sticky, you know, and that was from shooting real. Actually, that was almost all. It was all GoX Old Einsford that we shot through at that time. And just he had a good year. I guess he kind of forgot about it and didn't rust a lick. Just kind of turned, you know, that light, greasy look on the inside of the barrel. And I don't know. It just depends where you're at. Where I'm at, my uncle, my grandpa's and uncle, they always shot black powder, and then they remember Pyrodex coming out, you know. And my uncle had some like early 70s Hawken or something, and first time he got Pyrodex, he shot it, left it set for a week, ruined it. Because he was used to letting black powder set for a week, you know. And Pyrodex is just that fast on him, that corrosive, in my opinion anyway.
You know, I really make a habit of cleaning my firearms as soon as I get home. And every once in a while, if I get home late or whatever, I'll do it the next day. But even still, I don't like doing that. I clean them as soon as I get home. Black powder gun, anyway.
I sometimes give them 2 or 3 days. I'm a little lazy that way. But guys,
let me give you a little range tip, okay? If I don't think I'm gonna have the time, you know, at the range, I'll simply run a patch up and down to get the surface stuff off right quick, right? Vaseline. Take old Vaseline and just run it up and down the board, do the chambers right quick, and wipe it over the whole thing. You can come back to it in a month. It'll be okay. Because I'm using that I get the lady to make this stuff is basically like Vaseline, but it's actually beeswax and something. But I've used Vaseline before for that very reason, and it's soft. It's like think Vaseline, and nothing rusts. And so this is what I use nowadays to treat my bore. And if I don't think I'm gonna have time, I'll just run a clean patch up right quick, and I heavily lube one of these up and down so it's gunked up. It'll be fine in a week. I'll clean it.
Yeah. So you two down there, because I'm going to talk
Hold
snapper
on,
in a
let me
minute.
rebound.
Okay, what do you use any fiber wads when you're shooting your smoothbore? I know you like brown best, Jake. So
Yeah,
what
I
are you
hear you
using
now.
for wadding? Are you using fiber wads or what? What's your preferred brown best load?
You might find this odd, but it works really well for me. Is a lot of people, when I tell them this, the first words out of their mouth is, "Are you doing it wrong?" But I use a 7.35 round ball because you're supposed to use a 69 caliber ball or whatever, right? With the paper patch. I use a 7.35 ball, bare, no patch. Well, I'll patch it the first shot.
Yeah.
The first shot, I'll patch it. And I typically use anywhere between 70 to 100 grains, depending on the distance that I'm shooting. And that thing shoots really, really well like that. After, 5 or 6 shots, I could swab the barrel or not. I've shot that thing. I think I've shot it 50 or 60 shots before it was so fouled up that I had to use a nipple prick to clear it. But other than that, it will fire and shoot until I'm done.
Yeah.
Now,
what do you wad over top with? Paper?
Nothing.
Just
nothing.
Have you tried putting not a true wad, but a wad underneath the ball, like you do a shotgun?
Like a fiber wad or
No, just
wad?
a wad. A good friend of mine, he was a brown best expert. He lived with that gun, right? He would use wasp nests, paper wasp nests, which are everywhere down here. Some of them that big down here. He would save them, go around in the fall and winter and find them in barns and stuff. He would take brown best. He would drop a 75 grain charge in it. Then he would take the nest and cookie cutter it.
Yeah.
And then put a ball like you're talking. He called a spitball. Put it in and just ram it down on top. That wad will seal up any gas use, because what you're doing is when you're firing, that gas is blowing around the ball and kind of cleaning the bore really as it comes up, because it's blowing around the ball as it comes up. See, it's holding the ball in the center. But if you put that wad, your velocity will go up, your accuracy goes real good, and it will wipe it out at the same time. But a thin little thing. It'd be the equivalent of putting a piece of cardboard between them. It holds the pressure evenly, pushing against that round ball.
Try it. What I use is a 10 gauge overshot card.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, a 10 gauge overshot card. And that'll hold the ball in there and, keep everything compacted, at least pretty good. But mostly the way I shoot it, it's not exactly, precision marksmanship,
Right.
I haven't seen you miss much.
Big, lug up there, and it's even off to the side just a little bit too.
Yeah.
But that's what I use is a overshot card, 10 gauge overshot card for a shotgun.
Have you got your rear tang screw turned so the slot is lined up to be a rear?
Yes,
slot?
I do.
That's a cheat.
We shoot brown best, but we try to be pretty historical, so we usually shoot paper cartridges. But it's kind of weird, like what you said. We found that a lot of people will dump the powder out of the paper cartridge and then wad the paper down and put the ball on top.
Yeah.
But what my brother found most accurate was in that and the Charleville was to actually turn it around and set the ball right on the powder with the paper on the top. And a lot of people hated that, but it is true that when you don't use that gas gets around that ball and centers it.
Yep.
And, with those smoothbores, he has a video on the Charleville accuracy, and with that smoothbore, he was making headshots at 150 yards on a silhouette target every time, repeatedly. And he couldn't really do that when he was packing the paper down between the powder and the ball. So I always thought that was interesting. But I asked because when it comes to our 62 calibers, we shoot the cheaper India-made muskets, of course, so they're not all the same. So, the bore size varies a little bit. And what I found is just putting the ball down on the powder, just like Blackie said, but then I'll take the wasp's nest, which I actually learned that from Turkey Creek 1823, I believe. And he just packed the wasp's nest on top of it, but just bare ball down on the powder seems to work pretty good.
Yep. Now, about smoothbores, And long distance is just today, just a few hours ago, I took my 20 gauge smoothbore out, and I use a 6.0 round ball and a 20 thousandths patch or something. And it took me 3 shots, but I hit a torso target at 180 yards with that thing.
Yep.
You know, and it's like all this stuff about, smoothbores being completely inaccurate and stuff. It's like, well, define what you mean by inaccurate,
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
think of all the things we've heard that we've found out is just basically wives' tales. Like, oh, this, and you end up completely debunking it. And same thing with the smoothbore. They're much more accurate than people give them credit for.
Absolutely.
Especially if you know how to use it.
I was part of a black powder club here that they did a smoothbore match on Sunday morning at 100 yards. And we had several people had placed at Friendship show up and weren't in the top 10. These boys could shoot. They would step up there and shoot them smoothbore trade guns like it was a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
We used to do a bowling pin match with them boys where they would put up bowling pins at 100 yards and take 62 caliber trade guns. And if you missed 5, you had to buy the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Them boys
Here's
could shoot.
Here's what gets me, because I go around the country. I go to a lot of these reenactments and stuff. And what gets me is I always hear the analogy that the ball bounces down the barrel. Well, first of all, if you got a good tight-fitting ball, that's not going to happen. But even if you're using the military Brown Best 69 caliber ball like we do, when it's wrapped in paper, it's not doing that. And when you load that thing with 100, and sometimes we've loaded them up to 200 grains just to, really kick it out there. How many times do you think that ball has a chance to bounce in that barrel before it gets out the end? It's not like it's pinballing.
It really shouldn't bounce because the pressure, like hydraulics, it's going to go around the ball and center the ball. And that's the thing. As long as you got a good bore, relatively straight, it's not actually a little curve or something, it will center that up. And a smaller, looser ball may actually shoot better because you get more gas pressure flowing around it. See?
Yep.
I've heard that theory too, where it actually will pick the ball up and center it in the bore. Is that like what you're talking? You're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about.
He can still hear you.
Yeah, I'm bouncing in and out, but say it again.
So, like what you're talking about there, I think I heard Mike Bellevue say this, where when you're just bare-balled like that, it's not going to bounce. What it actually does is it picks the ball up in the center and rides it right in the center of the bore.
So the pressure 360 is going around. That's a curved ball, so that pressure hits and does that. If it was a flat bullet, it would try to swedge up, but it flows around the ball and at 360 centers it in the bore.
Yep.
And you remember chewed ball? We used to take 2 horseshoe files and put a ball and roll it and just like a golf ball. Why does a golf ball have all them dimples? It flies farther and more accurately because the wind resistance. So if you take your muzzleloading ball and make it have them dimples, it will fly more accurately at long range.
Yep. Hardy had.
You're a mechanic. Nick. Have you ever done the screwdriver trick with an air hose where you can just grab a screwdriver, hit it with the air hose, and it'll just sit there and spin in the air? Yeah. It's the exact same concept, the exact same way it works. Because since it's round, it equalizes all the way around it, and it will just put it right in the center of the bore.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, Hardy Hat out here is in the comment section. Guys, I will read your comments if you come up with a question or something. He said, could it be a lot of these wives' tales about smoothbores being inaccurate? Let me go ahead and click on this. Come from older, cheaper repos with subpar barrels. I have thoughts on that, but go ahead, Blackie. I'm sure you have more thoughts on it than I do.
Well, the British concluded when they were testing the Brown Best that a man that got hit beyond 100 yards was just unlucky. At 60 yards, they could keep it on a man target. Beyond that, it wasn't. However, I've watched my family take a 12-gauge slug and routinely hit a 55-gallon drum at 150 yards out of a shotgun. There's no rifling. So if it can be centered up in the bore and fired accurately, it'll hit. It's the man behind the trigger and the gun. That's all it is.
Okay. my thoughts are on it, and I'll let you go ahead, Jake, after this. But my thoughts are people just aren't used to, when they first get these guns, they're not used to loading 100 grains and then shoving a 69 or a 75 caliber round ball down that barrel and realizing what that recoil is going to be like. So, yeah, it takes a while to get used to.
Yeah. Well,
I think like Blackie said, it's just 9 times out of 10, it's going to be your issue, not the firearms.
yeah.
You know, I mean, look at the snub nose thing. People think that snub nose pistol is inaccurate. Well, Jerry McCallick can shoot a snub nose pistol at 300 yards. I know he's about the best there is, but I don't think it's the pistol's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. I notice that every time I think that my smoothbore is inaccurate, it's because it's shooting low left. And I know what causes that. I don't want to admit it, but I know what causes that.
Yeah, if the gun was that inaccurate, then why is it that when we lock it in a vise, it magically becomes accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, that's the
Exactly.
reason they use the testing machines and all the firearms testing, because we're the variable, you know.
I think a lot of those rumors also come from a time where a lot of knowledge was lost between people actually using them to people getting back into them and using them. I mean, there's still people doing it, obviously, but the large majority of people were, they would watch Davy Crockett, so they would go out and buy a flintlock pistol or a flintlock rifle, and they didn't know what they were doing. They were just sticking it in, it's just the way you see it on TV, and then all of a sudden, all these things are just crap. And it's because they've never taken the time to actually learn it the proper way or test it or go through the books, basically. I personally believe that's what a lot of it is from.
And you can testify this with the Brown Bess. That's a hunk of real estate, that rock. When you pull that trigger,
Yeah. Oh, we lost him.
It's a good show, though. Can you not hear us, Blackie? Yeah, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Back in. I get what he's saying, though, but that was a pretty good show. Another thing about Davy Crockett is people watch that and they see Fess Parker take a half a second shot at 100 yards where he don't even aim and stack 2 balls on top of each other, and then theirs don't do that for some reason. They can't figure out what the deal is. Still lost you, Blackie. No sound.
Still?
He's really good with the sign language, though.
So while he's out, Jake, why don't you tell us what got you into making your own black powder? That seems to be what you're mostly known for, other than, a few other, you reload and everything else on your channel. Guys, if you haven't checked out his channel, which I know almost all of you have, go do it. But what got you into making your own powder?
Necessity.
That would do it.
It was, I couldn't get it. It was during COVID and all that stuff. Well, I was making it before then, but I was kind of just doing experiments and stuff. It wasn't until, all the COVID stuff and we couldn't get it anymore where it was like, okay, we really need to get, serious about this. This is what we're going to be using, until something changes. So, so that was pretty much it.
Yep. I like this comment. There you go. I like this. Matthew Charles. This is my new saying. It's usually the nut behind the butt that's inaccurate.
The interpretive dance I was talking about, how hard it is to shoot a flintlock and have that explosion in your face and hold the gun steady at the same time.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Between the nuclear explosion in your face, the split-second delay, all those things, and being a firearm that makes a bunch of smoke and fire, which most people aren't used to anyway. All those things are going to make you stick the barrel in the dirt, in enough time.
And that large amount of weight from the hammer falling.
Shooting a flintlock will make anyone a better shot because it teaches you not to flinch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be the first to admit, I got into flintlocks way later than my brothers because I was all cap locks, everything, smoothbore cap locks, everything. But when I did get into it, I flinched way longer than they do. I still flinch some, but what I found out is if I sit down at the table, at the bench, for extended period of time, that does help. Just get used to it. And there he is. He's back in.
Say it again. You're fading in and out. We're doing the best we can, guys.
You're doing good. We still got 60 people in here, so that's really good.
Nice.
Gray Wolf said, "Oh, and Jake, thank you for the 45 Colt debunking."
Sure. Which one?
I imagine it's the 40 grain load,
40
what we
grain.
call the plowboy load.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Where do you guys think that got started? Well, I mean, people trying to use too soft a lead would be my guess, and messing up their bullets. They can't set them.
I personally think it's from the military round. You know, you had the original 45 Colt round, and then they switched to more of the Schofield round, which is just a little bit shorter.
Right.
And everybody was confusing the 45 Colt with that military 45 load, which is actually a shorter case.
Yes.
I personally think that's where it started, because you can't put 40 grains into that. You just can't. But a regular 45, you know, Colt case, it's got plenty of room for 40 grains.
Mm-hmm. Hardy Hat's in here one more time. He says not to hog the comment readings, but I got another one. Do you think we are in a golden age as far as historical reenacting shooting? Seems like we're spoiled for choices. What do you guys think?
But speaking on that cartridge thing a second, remember that the Dragoon load was 35 grains of black powder. The first gun the Army adopted that was cartridge was 44 caliber, and they wanted a 45. They wanted this to do what the 1860 Army did.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1860 Army was a 4.51, 200 grain conical with 40 grains or 35 grains of black powder behind it. So they made the cartridge. That's a 45 Colt.
Yeah.
And when they first issued it, it kicked too hard. And like you said, they actually softened it down and more like the Schofield and etc. But when I was coming up, they'd say the balloon head cases, you can't get 40 grains in there. Well, if you'll go, I'm tearing apart a couple of original cartridges, the old copper ones and etc. That powder was compressed to a solid cake. They put it in a press, put a thin little card on it, and rammed that down, and then they put the bullet in. Hell, I could probably put 45 pounds in and put 50 pounds of pressure. I put it in there. But that's probably where it comes from, because you couldn't just pour it. You'd have to, compress it and get it in there.
Yep. And I've heard a lot of people talking about you can't compress black powder. When you made that video, I was laughing because I was like, I've been hearing that for years. Why can't you compress black powder? They've been doing it for 200 years. I don't know
Isn't
where
that the whole purpose of a ramrod, to ram it down and feed it?
Yeah. No, if that was false, then we wouldn't need ramrods, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I've heard that so many times. Don't compress the black powder; you'll blow your gun up. And I'm like, I don't know where that comes from, but that's just another one of them things.
If half the things on the internet that I've heard would blow you up, I would have been gone. I don't know how many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'm with you. It's pretty hard to mess up a black powder 45 Colt cartridge. It's pretty hard, unless you just put some kind of 4F maybe or something in it. I don't know if that'd even do it.
4F will not. I've done it. It won't do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
You run into like in a car, an air fuel problem. 4F is so fine, when you compress it, there's not enough oxygen.
Right.
And so you shoot and you're actually blowing powder out. It'll just make a big flash because it's getting air then. But in the cartridge, no. Coarser powder like 3F or even 2F sometimes works better because it traps more air and it gets a more boof at the start out.
Wow, that's interesting, Blackie. I hadn't thought of it that way.
That's, I guess, why the Corning works so well.
It give you a little air.
It stays hard enough to trap air between the particles.
Yeah,
well, that's
the grains.
That's the whole reason to shoot 1F. And some people think we're stupid for it, but in anything 75 caliber or bigger, which we have a couple of them, we shoot 1F.
Hey,
because it's
guys,
cheap, easy to get.
My 50 caliber flintlock 1F is my target load. 55 grains of 1F. You can watch the ball going through the air, but it makes these teeny tiny little groups.
Yeah.
So if beer money was on and it's a 25-yard target, I bring out the 1F. And people go, why are you using that? Poof. Oh, I don't know. 5 group or less. But I had a lot of 1F because a buddy of mine had a cannon and he didn't want it anymore. So he said, here, you can have it, grind it down. Try it in a flintlock. I had a Brown Bess. So kind of fit it in the 50 cal. And by God, I got great groups. The velocity is crap. But if I'm just poking a hole in paper for beer money, who cares? You know.
I'll tell you this.
Play with the different grades. Find what it likes, you know.
And I don't have it in here right now, but I had a brown bess in here earlier. I must have took it out. But on these cheap India-made brown bess guns, one of the best target loads we've found is a 74 caliber ball and 200 grains of 1F. Now, it'll kick you like a mule.
Yeah.
But it will flat. I know it doesn't hit with you get something about it. It gets more pressure, but it's slower burning, I guess is what it is. But when you get that big brown bess barrel in there, it compacts that ball probably closer to the end. I don't know how it works, but man, that makes an accurate shooter. 200 grains of 1F. And people say here you do that in an India-made musket, and they will just go to pieces. You're gonna blow that up. It's gonna be. And that's another pet peeve of mine. These India-made muskets made out of carbon steel, the original ones made out of hammered iron, and people are worried that these are going to blow up.
Right.
Well, you also reach a point where there's 200 grains in there, and it's ignited at the rear. Remember, oxygen in there, and it starts burning from the rear, and it's spreading forward. Well, it's got to start moving before it gets to that end, you know. So you're actually shoving the powder column further down as is igniting. So yeah, you're getting a bigger push back because your burn's harder. But we played around with 200 grains in a Browning mountain rifle. Browning was the only company I knew that would sell other guns to 250 grain charges. And buddy of mine had one. The Browning, the name of like Browning rifles. Browning Mountain Cut made one Hawken. Or one offered a Hawken, and a buddy of mine's got one, and it's proofed up to 250 grain charges if you want to take elk or moose or something. But when you pull the trigger on that thing, you'll know it.
Okay. Classic Guns Today has a question, guys. He said, how long does it take each of all to clean a black powder firearm of any kind? It takes 45 minutes to an hour. It takes him 45 minutes to an hour. Go ahead, Jake. Oh, we lost Jake's sound.
Oh, we lost you.
Lost his sound.
What was his question?
So you go ahead, Blackie. You wanted to know how long it takes you to clean a firearm. It takes a black powder firearm of any kind. It takes him 45 minutes to an hour.
No. You're doing it wrong. I take a black powder revolver. I drop the barrel out, pull the cylinder out, and I've got a plastic shallow pan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I take a shallow plastic pan, like one of those little storage tubs. I put hot tap water and I put Dawn dishwashing liquid in it. I put the barrel in, I put the cylinder in. I then take and scrub and wipe down the receiver, okay, while they're soaking. Pull them out, run it in and out, pull up the cylinder, clean the chambers, turn it over, stick it under and rinse it out real good, let it dry. That's it. I'll clean the gun in less than 2 minutes.
Pretty fast. What about you, Jake? What's your cleaning like?
I pretty much do the same thing that Blackie does. Only thing is, after it's dried off, I oil it with some Ballistol. But I shot 3 black powder firearms today. My Fowler Smoothbore, my Kibler, and my Walker, and I cleaned all of them in probably 15 minutes.
Yep.
So, but you know, some buddies of mine, they do that too. They really get meticulous about it, and they'll spend 20, 30, 40 minutes cleaning their one rifle. So,
Blackie, we got 2 of you.
Okay, so I did that. I don't know how, but I can hear you. That's a good thing. Now, have you ever heard of pouring the fouling out of a rifle?
Mm-hmm.
Pouring?
Pouring.
Like filling the barrel?
Take your brown bess, get you a plug, stick into the touch hole, close, fill the barrel full of hot water, let it sit 10 minutes, turn it, pour the next in, put your thumb over the top and shake it. Then pour that fouling. It'll turn black as soot. Water, shake it, pour it out. When the water comes out clean, run the patch up and down. You're done.
That's how I do that
5
double
minutes.
barrel shotgun up there.
I was about to say, Snapper, you have been quiet. What's your cleaning and how long does it take you? I know you're pretty meticulous.
It depends. If it's a replica, I'm not very meticulous. But at the moment, I think I only own.
I was about to say that's all original.
I think I have one replica.
Yeah.
I actually own now, and so all my originals, I'm meticulous. Like usually they'll take me over an hour, just because, and I even run them through a sonic cleaner.
There was a guy back in the late, maybe middle 90s who pointed out in Muzzleloader magazine that we had all the military records for Braddock's Army, Washington's Army, Lee's Army, Grant's Army, etc. And he said, okay, where are the huge piles of cleaning patches to clean the guns?
Yeah.
Mhm.
There aren't any.
Yep.
So how are they cleaning their guns? You would take your canteen cup, put water in it, get hot coffee water, pour it in the barrel, fill the barrel up, let it soak, pour the fouling out, and then run the patch up. Only at the end did you run the grease patch up and down, and you turned it muzzle down so the water ran away from the breech. That's how I clean all my muzzleloading rifles. It takes 10 minutes or less.
Yeah, see, I've been doing that backwards. See, I'll put it in my sink and I'll get hot water about as hot as I could stand to hold it. Then I'll pour that down and I'll let it spray out of the touch hole until it looks halfway decent. And then I'll run a few patches down and clean it that way. But I hadn't thought about, capping it off and shaking it and pouring it out the other way.
Just you're surgitating, you're making the water slosh, and black powder dissolves in hot water. The British used to have a little funnel that was a funny shaped funnel, and it was for cleaning their rifles when they had cordite in it, where they would open it up and it went into the chamber, and they could pour a metal canteen full of boiling hot water, shake it, and pour it out. That's what they did to clean them from the breech forward. So
I'm going to give Snapper a shameless plug here. He's got a video out there, guys, actually on the subject of how much water in the Civil War, what it would require to keep your gun going. And one reenactor put it to me pretty well. He said, I asked him how often did they clean? When do you clean? He said they started cleaning when they couldn't load or rotate the gun anymore. Then you clean it. That's just kind of how it is. But I'm going to say something that's going to shock a lot of people, because I was taught by people that grew, from the 50s, 60s, my grandparents and all of them, how they did it. And they've done it through the years. They did some really weird stuff people wouldn't do today, like regular grease. People would absolutely not do that today. But, my grandparents back in the Dust Bowl, whatever, when people were still using cap locks and even some flint locks to survive with, they cleaned or lubed with whatever they had. What I do is I'll take, say on my Hawken, I'll take the barrel off. I'll clean the stuff around the sink, but I'll get me a cup full of really hot water, just tap water, and I'll walk out in the garden and I will fill the barrel up. It's draining out the nipple hole, because I got the nipple out. I'll shove the ramrod down several times, break that black powder loose, and then I'll refill it again until my cup's empty. And then what people won't believe is I'll take a Remington wipe, which most people today think is just absolutely terrible, stick it on there, and I will run and plunge that water with that Remington wipe. And I'll get it back in. I've never had trouble with petroleum or whatever's in it. I've been doing it that way for decades now, and I haven't had personally any trouble. But I'll use Remington oil, whatever I can find, to clean the gun with. But yeah, I just go outside and dump water through it. Takes me about 10 minutes to clean one. Unless I'm going to do a cap and ball pistol, I throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner, and that's pretty quick too.
Hey, Snapper,
Yeah, that's my preferred way.
on your original firearms, like your pistols, do you disassemble them completely and put them through your sonic cleaner? Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was about to say, you're about to get into some technical cleaning when he comes to his first model. He has an original first model Dragoon.
Yeah.
So
That's my first model Dragoon. I actually brought this down just because I wanted to tell you guys a funny story that happened recently with it. My Griswold and Gunnison. I finally got one of the grips back, so hopefully the other one will be in soon. But earlier when you were talking about gate holders into the community of, oh, you have to use this or this or this. So I actually was shooting, and this is original Griswold and Gunnison. And this guy came over and he was like, do you know they never made brass frame guns? I'm just sitting there going, okay. The guy literally thought it was a Colt, not a. He didn't even know that there was a brass frame, Confederate pistol. And yeah, his whole thing was they never made a brass frame, pistol. It's like, I beg to differ, but sure, whatever, man.
Yep. That's one of those things. People get real smart in 5 minutes and then got to let you know about it.
Or they'll watch a couple videos and then all of a sudden they're an expert on the subject.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a guy show up. I was shooting black powder at this range, and he came over on my flintlock and told me that I was such an idiot because I was using natural lube, beeswax stuff, that transmission fluid was 100 times better and was being used in all the muzzleloading Olympics of Europe. And I was an idiot. Transmission fluid was the way to go.
Yep.
Right.
You've been around this game a long time, Blackie. You remember any of the guys like my ancestors using grease, just regular old car grease,
like axle grease?
Yep. You remember that, Blackie? Have you seen that?
Of what now? Axle grease?
Yeah, just using grease.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they did. A lot of people, at least in my family, have done.
White lithium grease and beeswax makes a real good lube.
Mm-hmm.
It's different than the other grease, So white lithium grease seems to do better.
Yep. I'm going to go over here, guys. There was some questions. If you guys want to. Grey Wolf said, I'm with Blackie. Toss the barrel and cylinder into an old gallon ice cream bucket. Yeah, and get it cleaned up.
Yeah, fast. And
what's funny is a lot of your guns don't have finish to anyway because you've already antiqued most of them, haven't you?
Bingo.
And it's still not rusting.
Yeah, doesn't rust.
Okay, Rock McLaughlin said, anyone ever try filling black powder 45 cartridge with like dried goldenrod flowers squeezed down instead of cream of wheat? Oh, for a filler? No, I've never used a filler. Have you used filler, Jake?
Oh, yeah. I've used filler plenty of times for gallery loads and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For like with a round ball or something.
Mm-hmm. I seen your video on that the other day. What'd you think of that round ball load?
Oh, the black powder one was a lot of fun to shoot. Those smokeless ones I tried were ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were. I mean, I forget what it averaged. It had a huge spread, but it was like 350 feet per second or something.
Wow.
Yeah, they're pretty slow.
Yep. I was going to ask you this because I got a debate going on. Well, it's not a debate. It's something Duke and I have been talking about for a long time. I wish he's here tonight. How many grains of powder could you pack in that cartridge under that round ball, do you think?
In a 45 Colt case?
Yeah. You think you could get 60?
Like if you were like compressing it with a compression die or something?
The round ball. Think you could get 60 grains in there?
I don't think you could get 60. You might be able to get 50, but I don't think you get 60. And even if you did, I don't know that it'd do you much good.
Well, here's the question that we've often wondered. If you take a 45 Colt, can you, because when a lot of people talk about the power of the Walker, they're talking about 60 grains in a round ball. What they're not thinking is the originals had 50 grains in a conical. Right. Or even 40 grains in a conical in some cases that I've read. Could the 45 Colt with that big heavy bullet be nearly, if not the same power as the Walker, considering it has a big heavy bullet in front of that 40 grains of powder? I mean, it's almost the same.
It already is pretty close. With 40 grains of 3F and a 250 grain lead flat point out of like a 7.5 inch barrel, it's 1,000 foot per second rig. And I've tried in my Walker running 55 grains and a round ball, and it's like 1150s ish.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'd rather have the heavier bullet over a round ball, I think.
Yeah.
So,
well, the energy transfer over a heavier bullet should be better, anyways.
You did,
and it's not that much slower.
You did see my video with the Rogers and Spencer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
doing 1,177 feet per second
Yeah,
with a 50 grain charge.
Yeah, that's what my Walker runs. You know.
Yep.
Yeah, a
This
smaller
gets-
cylinder, but it's a more volume per chamber. So yeah.
See, we've got into the weeds on this too with Snapper, and I don't know if he remembers this conversation, but to the nth of a degree, we could be getting more feet per second out of a gun with a top strap. Remember us talking about that, Snapper?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Because it could move the barrel just a little bit and make your gap a little wider. That's really in the weeds, but it's a thought we've had. We've talked.
You know
about
what's a strange thing that I've noticed, and I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm trying, and I think the answer is not what most people would think. And with this Griswold and Gunnison, I don't have a chronograph yet, but this thing hits harder than any 36 I've ever shot in my entire life. It acts more like a 44 caliber gun than a 36 caliber gun, and it does have a really, really short cylinder gap, like almost non-existent, and that just was pure luck because I had to rebuild the arbor on it. But it's giving me more power than, at least I'm feeling more power than other guns that I have that I can actually just shim them to get it to the exact same, amount of cylinder gap. And being that this is the cylinder is actually a piece of iron that they rotate. They spin it when it's hot, and that's how it gets its strength. And under some computer programming, it looks to me like on a normal firearm, when it fires, it'll just slightly expand and then slightly contract. And with this, it had less contraction, or like less expansion and less contraction. It's been a while. It could be backwards. It might have had more expansion and then more extraction to it, but whatever it was actually making the gun more powerful on the computer simulation. And I need to get a chronograph just to test it, but this thing hits like an 1860 Army all day long under a normal 36 just load.
Okay, one of the things is not only the cylinder, okay, because any of the Colt designs, you got your base pin, the cylinder, and the barrel.
Right.
Upon firing, how much does that stretch?
Well, being that it's got a brand new arbor in it, and that I made it as tight as I could using machinery, that probably could be as well. There's like almost no stretch compared to what
That's one of the things is how much that cylinder gap opens up during firing. It's going to rebound back to what we see it at the start.
That's true.
But upon firing, how much does it open up and you lose? See, and so this gun design, the metal of the arbor stretches more, so it appears weaker than this one. Same design, but that one is denser, we shall say, and so it doesn't stretch as much, and so it velocity. I've done it with two identical 1860 arms. It was a match pair with one serial number and apart, so it was like 21 and 22, and 22 always about 50 to 60 feet per second more than the other one. And it was because of the arbor stretch. That was it. I wasn't losing flash at the cylinder gap.
Because I was comparing it directly to my 51 Navy, and exact same loads in each gun. And the Griswold and Gunnison just dramatically more powerful, more recoil, and quite a bit harder hit.
Well, you got to get a chrono, man, and just see what it's doing.
I know. I should have done that already, but my life right now has been a little chaotic. I'm just glad to be at my own home at the moment.
We're glad to have you back on the show. It's been like 2 months. We got a question here from Veteran Iron and Outdoors, and I'll let you guys answer this. It said, I'll let Jake start. What's y'all's experience with Ballistol? I bought some to use on my black powders, and it says it doesn't gum up, but it's been a few months, and it's getting gummy. Don't know if it mixed with oil or I missed or something.
How much Ballistol you putting on there?
Yeah. I think you got too much Ballistol.
Yeah. I use Ballistol to oil my black powder firearms, but what I do is I spray it on a rag and I wipe it off, and after a few minutes I'll wipe it off with a dry rag, and that's it.
I'm also a fan of like spraying it really like pretty deeply, and then using an air hose and just spray the gun out.
Yep.
Because you don't want too much, because that stuff will actually gum up almost like a grease, a real low density grease, but it will gum up once it's been sitting for a while.
Yeah, we had
it tends over time to kind of absorb. To me, it remains a little touch sticky. So dust, anything in the air, it just clings to it.
Yeah,
that's true too.
That's kind of where I am with it. Like I said, you guys know I've used Ballistol, but I'll use anything. And I think that's probably why I don't have as much of a problem with like Remington oil or anything else. I'm not oiling it till I can see the oil. I'm literally just getting enough oil on there to prevent rust.
Just to
exactly.
Whatever oil's in there, wiping it out. Like most of the time, I don't have to run a cap on my cap and ball revolvers to clear the cylinders.
I never
because
do.
I got them dried with cleaned them with hot water, just a little dab of oil, and they dry out. There's not usually rust when you use hot water because it evaporates itself for the most part.
Right. I completely agree. People will use way too much oil. If you should be able to spray it off with like 90 psi, and whatever's left is more than you would ever need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what he's saying. He said, I sprayed it on a patch and white parts, and I never wiped with a dry cloth. That would be what I think you're running up against. So, Ballistol water mix, moose milk. Yeah, Soylent Green's in. Hi, Soylent. Glad to see you.
Hey.
Let's get into because we got Jake here. We got to talk about this. Dry mixing your powder or CIA? What's the better?
I don't do CIA anymore.
Oh, you don't?
I do
this
not.
Is for me. I'm getting into this. I need to know these things.
We did the CIA method for quite some time because we got a better product. It was faster, more powerful powder, but it was longer, drawn out. You need a bunch of chemicals. You need acetone and all kinds of other, not acetone, denatured alcohol. But we found that if you just mill your components together long enough, you can get just as powerful as powder as the CIA method. Now, the whole idea of, milling all your components together at the same time is always a little controversial. Some people don't like that, but it's the best, fastest, easiest way to get powerful black powder that I know of. And even in my CIA powder, I still would mill it. After I made it with the CIA method and dried it and everything was sitting out, I still would mill it for, 6 or 8 hours anyway. So you end up doing it both ways that way anyhow, and it's not really worth the effort, in my opinion.
Yeah. Soylent Green wants to know, Jake, if you're the brother of the Adventure Cowboy, you're spitting images of Clayton. You watch the Adventure Cowboy?
No, I don't.
Oh, you'll have to go check him out. He does pretty exclusive Cimarron guns and stuff. And
oh yeah,
go check him out, Adventure Cowboy. But yeah, you do. You do look a lot alike.
Yeah, you look like you could be his brother.
But yeah, I was interested in that because I was looking at it and I was like, that's going to up the cost substantially to put 2 cups of alcohol in every half pound of powder, which I assume you're probably mixing half a pound or so at a time. Yeah, something like that. Are you doing a full pound?
No, we do 200 grams, which is just shy of a half a pound.
Yeah. Okay. And that's not going to cause too big of an explosion. Another thing people don't get is the ball mill itself is fairly easy to come apart and what it looks like. So you'd have to, it's not like that powder's compressed in there. It would be more of a than a boom.
Yeah, and even the ball mill that we're using now, it just has a rubber cap that goes over it, and we don't even put the hose clamp on it. So it would literally just go poof out one end.
It won't hold any pressure. It just lets it go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And people don't realize that's when you see powder horns, they're not usually originals, aren't glued. They're just tacked in the butt plug in the front. That's because those things are designed to come apart if something bad happens. Same thing goes for a lot of original, at least Colt style flasks. They're not real well put together. That's because they know if they want to get spark in there, they want that dude to come apart just as fast as possible.
Yep.
They don't want it to hold together.
It'll split right in half.
So I'm pretty big on using plastic containers for all my black powder as well. Like fairly thin plastic containers, almost like the GoX style. You reusing that just because it wouldn't hold that much pressure anyways. If it did somehow ignite.
We had a guy at the range that had his shooting box to his right. so he could turn and shoot straight down range. And he was doing a flintlock dueling pistol. And of course, a little bit of powder had got spilled, and he got up there and he had a little bit of a hang fire. So he wiped off, redid it. Well, he was going to dry snap, and he cleaned it out. And when it went spook, the spark went straight down and hit and ignited the powder, and his flask was laying in it. That Colt flask went poof, 2 complete halves like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's better than it not doing that. That would end up tragically.
People complain about especially replicas and things. If you drop them, you know, people got them wrapped up with tape and everything else. And I'm like, I don't think you should do that, because they're meant to be fragile to an extent. They're meant to come apart if something bad happens. You don't want that thing holding together.
You don't want that thing to turn into a bomb and throw shrapnel everywhere.
Yep. Stephen Young said, "What's up, Blackie?"
Hello. Well,
Constitutional Carpenters in. Hi.
Turner Kirkland of Dixie Gun Works for years and years, in every one of his catalogs, said he wanted someone to manufacture a clear, round powder flask with a plunger, something you could look through and see the powder measure. And several companies tried it, but of course, the test was what happened when it blew up. And any of the plastics they had of that day were so strong, it was a pipe bomb when it went off. Rather than just blowing apart, it was a bomb, you know. And so for years, nobody would take him up on it. You know, several companies thought about it.
You made it out of
acrylic. It was fragile enough that would just blow apart rather than exploding.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard. Well, there you go. You left. Wouldn't acrylic create static electricity with it rubbing back and forth inside of acrylic, like plastic, clear plastic? I'm not 100% sure. Just I remember something about acrylic that will create a static charge.
It can generate a static charge, you know, because we used to do that experiment. You take a rabbit fur and this acrylic disc, and you put it there, and it would build up a charge on the disc. The disc had a wire around it. And it was a thing we did in college for a demonstration of generating static electricity. Acrylic will. So
a clear flask would be really nice, actually.
They make them now. Dixie's got them, but it's a completely different plastic now.
Okay.
So I got to ask Jake about your most, probably one of your 2 most famous videos you got out there, where you do the Mike Fink shot, or I call it the Mike Fink shot. What on earth possessed you to do that? Did you just have a car mirror handy, or what?
No, my one of my buddies that I go black powder shooting with all the time, he sent me that video that I use of that Marine drill instructor shooting his M4 backwards. And he sent me that, and he said, "Do you think you could do that with a flintlock?" And I said, "Well, I'll give it a try." And so, you know, we drive out to the pasture, and you know, and he says, "Oh, hey, I got this mirror," you know. And I'm like, "Oh, cool. That was just for show, you know, me pulling it off there." But he had one in his truck already. And so I propped it up. I tried it with my phone at first, but the trouble is I couldn't see the front sight way out there.
Yeah.
You know, and my brother, who my brother does a lot of stuff with me. He doesn't want to show his face on here. You know, he's kind of like, yeah, it's your thing. But he really is the one that knows all the chemical stuff when it comes to making powder and stuff. He's a big part of it. But he's like, well, the reason why it works for him is because he can look at it and hold it right up to his optic. You know, he's like, you're going to have to use the mirror. And I'm like, okay. So I used the mirror, and I made the shot on the first try, which is why everyone was so excited about it. And I didn't try it again. It was just like, okay, I did it once. That was good enough for me. You know, I don't want to miss again and then be lame. So,
yeah, that's pretty. A couple of years ago, my brother did it with a Traditions flintlock, and he did it. But what he did was he did a tin can, but he did it about 20 yards. And he used a hairbrush mirror, and we didn't film it. That was before we were filming. But when I saw you do that, that looked like it had to have been 80 yards, and that's what
I think it was 75.
That's pretty impressive.
It kind of depends, you know, because we drive out to the pasture and we pretty much park in the same spot, and then we'll set our target up, but it kind of varies, you know, where we put our target. So it's probably anywhere from 65 to 75 yards.
Wow. Still impressive.
That
Thank
was
you.
very impressive, I thought.
Very impressive.
But
The trouble was really it's just so awkward. But when you move your rifle, everything's backwards in the mirror.
Mhm.
So it's like to get it lined up is really tricky. And then when you pull the trigger, it goes that way instead of back at your shoulder. So it's just like it's just wrong. Everything about it is just wrong.
Yep. And I can't wait to try it with that 36 because it's not going to move around very much.
Yeah.
But I'll give a plug out though, and I know you agree with me. I've shot a lot of muzzleloading guns, and I've yet to find anything that comes even close to that Kibler rifle, except a couple originals. At Kibler, they know how to put together a gun now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been wanting one just because.
What got you into Kiblers? What got you into that? What was
Well, I've owned several Pedersolis and Traditions and all kinds of other ones, but I wanted to buy one of their Colonial ones, because it was like that's the best deal going. And a buddy of mine bought one of the Colonial rifles in '54, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, it's just beautiful, and he put it together, and I mean, man, it's beautiful. And I thought, man, that thing's really nice. And I held it, and I got to feel it. I haven't shot it. And I ended up going with the Southern Mountain Rifle because it was just a little bit more, I think it's longer overall, but it's lighter and it's easier to move. I at the last minute, I went with that one instead of the Colonial. And man, I'm really glad I did because it is an absolutely fantastic flintlock. It is by far and away the nicest one I've ever shot. I'm lucky enough to own one.
Yeah. And I didn't see your video actually until I'd already ordered mine. But because I don't know if you watched him, Black Powder TV had one out for a while. And I really miss that guy. He had been back for a while. But man, there's something about that when you realize just how not right the replicas are, most of them. And then you hold one that's built like an original and you're like, man, I could wrap my fist around this thing twice. Because it's like it's so light, it's so easy to carry. And I know not all of them, of course, were like that, but man, that's a beautiful balanced piece of work right there. And I can't shoot, and it makes me look good. But
I actually feel that way on almost every original. Like even the original, like Colts and whatnot, they don't feel exactly the same in the hand as the replicas do. They feel smaller and lighter than the replicas do.
When you've handled an actual Colt in the shape of the grip, and then you pick up a replica, it's completely different.
The Colt feels like it was molded to your hand almost perfectly, and the replicas don't.
Yeah, they're better balanced. It was probably because the steel's not as good, but they're lighter. Usually they're smaller.
Yeah,
the components are usually a little smaller.
Which ones are lighter, the originals or the replicas?
The original ones
feel a little lighter, better balanced in my opinion.
Okay, interesting.
They might not be, but the grip itself. It's one of those things that, poor Garrett, I was like, you should try a real Colt. And you got that 1860. And now, once you try a real Colt, it's really, really hard to go back to a replica. Really hard. That's why I have so many originals.
The channel's fun went downhill after I got my first original.
They're addicting. They're absolutely addicting. They're completely different than the replicas. I mean, they're not dramatically different, but it feels like the difference between like somebody built as a kit that's just half-assed versus, or excuse my language, and then buying something that was made by a person who specializes in it and personally made it for you. That's the feeling between buying a replica and an original. Even worn out originals feel a million times better than any replica I've ever shot.
Wow. Interesting.
I was about to say you can't replace the action feel of a gun that's been taken care of, but the action's been ran for 150 years, even though it's been taken care of. You can't mimic that. I don't think it's just that's the way it is. Of course, they weren't like that originally, but that's how they feel.
That Walker that you ended up getting me, that's one of the only replicas I have, and I actually put lapping compound on all the moving surfaces and just sit there all day and actually made a huge difference. That was probably one of the best action jobs I've ever done, was just putting diamond lapping powder or diamond lapping compound on everything.
Yes.
I probably cocked it about 250 times, took it apart, and went through the ultrasonic cleaner to make sure everything's out of it. It's like glass.
When I was building guns for long range and etc., and I'd be building like a 1911 for a carry gun for somebody, one of the secrets was once I got it all as polished as I wanted and everything else, I put Crest toothpaste, which is like 9,000 grit polishing compound, into the action and sit there and work the slide, work the hammer, work all the parts till they were glass, you know. And so it was the secret, the polishing. That's the whole thing. Make it feel like a gun that had had 50 years of service. Then it felt really smooth.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that I'm not hating on replicas in any way, shape, or form, guys.
I mean, either. Please don't take it that way. It's just they're not the same thing. Unfortunately, they're not the same thing.
If you ever find yourself in a position to own an original, well, at least with Colts, I don't know about everything else. With Remingtons, it might be the opposite. But if you ever get yourself in a position where you can own an original and you think to yourself, I can get this, but I have a replica, get it, because you will. It's night and day. You will love you know, it's something. If you get in a position to do it, is my opinion. And the original will get more valuable over time. The replica will too, but not in your lifetime. Right. You know,
the only thing I have any experience with that kind of subject is my 1887 Winchester 10 gauge.
Oh yeah.
A buddy of mine has one of those Chiappa 12 gauge coach gun things, you know, and he brought it out a few weeks ago and we shot it, and man, it was crunchy. Crunchy. So much where after I shot it, I thought, oh, that's cool. And then I didn't take mine out, but I got home and I pulled it out and I'm working the action a couple of times. It's like, man, this is like butter compared to that. But not that I don't know about Winchester's quality, especially back then, but it's like you said, you know, it's got 150 years worth of
use.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the replica was in 1887 too?
Yes, and I think it was made by Chiappa.
I have to ask, does he have trouble with the last round?
Yes, it does not project. It stands straight up.
Every one that I've ever seen does. I've not owned one, but I've been around a lot of them, and every single replica I have seen does that. And man, people were giving Mike Bellevue a nightmare of a hard time in the comment section because, you know, you weren't working the lever hard enough, and this and that. And I typed in his comment section. I said, if this replica is the hill you're going to die on, you don't have many guns, do you? Because, I mean, I don't mind people having them, but when people give Mike a hard time in his comment section, it drives me crazy. But
yeah, he's a good guy. Seems like a really good guy, Mark Bellevue.
Yeah, and he gets some of the work. It's probably because his channel's so big, to be honest. Yeah. But he gets some really nasty people sometimes in the comment section over there. And that one guy, if you would just throw that lever harder, this and that, and this and that, and I just said, if this is the hill you're dying on, you need more guns.
Yeah. Well, you do have to, even my original, man, you do have to work that thing because, you know, the way those things work, you guys probably know this, is what ejects, ejects, the next shell coming up.
Yes.
So, you know, you got to work it a little bit. But
Winchester went to Browning and wanted a lever action shotgun, and Browning went, no, the slide action. No, we want lever action.
This is Winchester, and we have lever action.
He didn't want to build that thing, and so they built it, and it came out 88, 89, and then in 93, he said, "You want to see what a pump does?" And came to 93 to 97. You know,
I've read that is John Browning's least favorite gun he ever made. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've read that.
I'm still absolutely glad he did, because that was a 1901 and 10 gauge. That is one of the coolest guns. I don't know how practical it is, but not every gun has to be practical to everybody. And I
have plenty of guns that aren't practical.
Yep. I preach that all the time.
It's not practical at all.
There is somebody somewhere that has a job where the most practical gun he can own is a Rossi Ranch hand. And I say that all the time, and people are like, that's crazy. But you know what? If it works for somebody, you know, a little short lever action pistol, whatever, somebody somewhere, that's their gun, and they can probably use it better than anybody else.
That would be the perfect gun for someone crawling through 3-foot diameter sewer pipes gigantic wharf rats. That is the gun choice.
There
If
you
you
go.
gotta have a liver gun, that's one, baby.
That's the one to have.
That's
Yeah.
a sewer rat gun if I ever seen one right there.
Yeah. There you
That's
go.
hilarious. Yeah, it would be.
I'll be honest with you. I've been around a few, and they're really hard to beat when you're in a single cab pickup. I mean, like if you're like out in the country, coyote hunting, cutting dogs off the side of the pickup or something, it is really hard to do. Like where it's legal, of course, to just whip that pistol or that pistol lever action out, and you can get that on your shoulder. It's not something I would suggest, but you can do it. And with 44 Magnum in a 10-inch barrel, 12-inch barrel, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that was something I was going to ask you. You got your 45 Magnum loads, and I've been waiting for somebody to make that video. I don't have a gun. I don't have a Blackhawk in 45 Colt. And you made that video, and I was so excited. What do you think? Is it chasing 44 Magnum, or is it there?
I think it beats it.
Oh, yeah?
Really?
I think it beats it.
And what was that, 23 gains of H110?
Yeah, and with a 300 grain bullet too. Which you could get a 300 grain for 44 mag too, just the same. But I guess I'm biased. I like 45 Colt better than I do 44 mag, so maybe that's why it beats it in my opinion. But
yeah, and I was wondering that because you were talking about shooting it in your Marlin, and I was wondering why in the world you couldn't shoot it in, say, a Rossi, because the gun Model 92 is made to take in 44 Magnum shells all the time.
Yeah.
I have 44 Magnum Rossis.
Yeah.
And
So I
I'm
wonder.
I'm sure a 92 and a 94 Winchester would be just fine, but I don't personally have any experience running that load in one of those guns.
Mhm.
Okay, here's the one thing you got to be aware of. Okay, the locking lugs on the 92 are at the rear.
Mm-hmm.
The bolt does compress upon firing. Again, steel flexes.
Mm-hmm.
You're using a straight wall case. Upon firing, it's going to glue to the wall, and then the bolt comes back. You're going to get head separations at point X.
Okay.
So be aware of it. So when you're looking at your brass to reload, look for that line. That tells you this one doesn't stretch too much. Forget it. It ain't going to do it. Because you can take 44 Magnum and load it up in 92s. And I've done that. And at point X, the head tears off the case.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the weakness. It's a great case, but the pressure sticks it to the chamber, and then the bolt goes backwards. Just that thousandth of an inch, and it stretches the brass.
It's something to watch for.
Yeah.
Gray Wolf said 92 is okay, 94 not so much. Interesting. I know why you don't do it in a 73 or 66 because it's got the toggle link.
Yeah,
action.
they're just wimpy.
Yeah, and I thought that was I was really appreciative of you making that video because, as a matter of fact, it was just a few months ago I had a relative tell my brother and I that no 45 will match modern plus P 9mm ammunition.
Watch me.
I was like,
Oh,
really? 45? And he was not talking about ACP. He was talking about 45 Colt. And so I was like, I can't even continue this conversation at this point.
I had a guy arguing with me on 10mm,
Yep.
and he had ballistic gelatin, 18-inch by 4 foot long. Okay. Show me the shot cavity. Okay. No gun can do that. How much money? What? How much money you want to bet? And so he wanted to put money. Okay. So we had two identical blocks, side and side. He shot his with his 10mm and made this nice softball sized cavity. I shot mine with my Colt Walker and blew the block in half. The expansion cavity blew the block apart.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's because the bullet might be moving slower to an extent, not penetrating as hard and fast. I've heard that about Walkers, especially with conical bullets, that you slow that bullet down, that you can get that cavity bigger. I don't know. I've heard that. I don't know if it's right or not.
Was that a round ball or a conical you were using, Blackie?
Conical. I was using a 405 grain 45-70 bullet in a Walker. Don't try this at home, kids.
Crazy.
So he loaded it in there, and then he took his filed the end of the bullet off so it would go around.
No. I put the powder behind it. I'd hollow pointed it. I put it in there, and I had that big barrel. And when I pulled that trigger, that block went and just exploded.
Okay.
Don't ask
I'm
me how
sorry,
I know
but
about that file.
I'm going to have to do this. How many grains were you using?
I want to say it was like 35 or 40.
Okay. So did you size it down to 454 or 452
Yes.
or something?
It's right at like 456 or so. And so I ran it through a 451 sizing die.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I squinched it just a little bit this way as well because I had to put pressure to get it through there. So I loaded that into the cylinder, off the gun, slid my barrel on it, rotated it on. He didn't know that. I just walked up and pulled the cap and ball out and cocked it. Yeah.
That's funny. So you got to ask you guys, how many of you guys ever have had to file the end of a round ball or conical off after you loaded it to get it to go under the barrel? Yeah.
Today.
Oh, today?
Today.
I carry a file just for that reason.
Remember,
There's nothing worse.
Elmer Keith got into reloading because in 1900, they were shooting their Colts up in the air at midnight on New Year's Eve. And he had taken a bullet that went into a 50-90 Sharps and loaded it into a 45 Colt case with powder. And it bent the top strap off the gun. That's the reason he decided to find out what made this work or not. So
I didn't know that. I knew he blew up several single action armies, but
it's in his book 6 guns. He said he'd used a 45-90 Sharps.
I know that's why he decided to go to the 44 because it had more, metal there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to hear, Jake, this story about you. I'll tell you mine first. I have in the box. You can't hardly see it, but it's right there. An 1855 Root original Colt in the box. Comes with an original, original everything, accessories, and comes with an original brass bullet mold. Well, over the years, somebody has poured way too hot lead in that, and they've warped it just a little bit. The round balls work perfectly. Dead soft lead with that little bitty loading lever on there, you cannot get those conicals in because they're just a touch too big. And so I have had to take that gun and cut the end of the bullet off, but right in the middle of filming, actually, to get it to work. But what's your story? What happened today?
Well, luckily my camera wasn't running, but I saw what is it? Western Heritage Channel or something. Todd Kessler put a video out the other day where he's shooting his Walker at 100 yards, and I'm like, oh man, I've never tried that. I'm gonna give that a try. And so I brought my Walker with me today, but I didn't bring any round balls. All I had was conicals. I had some Johnson and Dow conicals that I left my round balls at home, and so I loaded it up with 50 grains. And I'm looking around for my round balls, and I couldn't find them. And I thought, oh well, I'll just use some of these conicals. And I put that conical in there and pressed it in there, and got it halfway, and it wasn't going anymore.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at me. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, So, we clipped off, we took some dikes, we clipped off most of it, and I took my pocket knife and scraped it off until I could, get it on there, and fired the one round and then loaded it back down to 30 or 35 or whatever.
Yeah.
You should have pulled your phone out, made a short, and called black powder, cap and ball, Keith load. Just take the end off.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, got Wild Texas said, Blackie Thomas got me into black powder revolvers. There you go. Brought another one into the fold. There are so many people doing black powder nowadays, and it's amazing to me. It's because of the YouTube thing, but there's no caps. But people are still buying pistols, so I guess they're getting them somewhere. But, I don't know how they're shooting them, but they're getting in the hobby.
Now, you could always make your own caps. That's kind of why I started making them, because I couldn't find caps for a while. But
I was going to say, Jake, you make everything yourself. Have you made your caps yet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my brother's department. He's in charge of making the caps. He doesn't like the way I do it, so he does it better, so we just let him do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, only
That's
one
good.
guy in 100 can paint a fence correctly. So, yep, you're the one to make the caps. Go ahead, brother.
It seems pretty time consuming to me. I'll admit it. That's one reason I got into it.
Yeah, it's tedious for sure.
Yep. And I didn't know how you guys were. You punched them out of aluminum cans or what?
Yep.
With the tool?
Yeah, the what is it? The 22 reloader tool or whatever it is. They're the outfit that sells it. But we had trouble with it at first, and I don't know if it was just mine, but you know they came out really uneven. Sometimes they punch a hole in them, and so what we would do is we'd take our aluminum can and we cut it, and then we'd hit it with a piece of sandpaper, like some 320 grit, and my brother would heat it up a little bit and kind of anneal it, and then they punch out really easy, and they make nice looking caps. And I haven't had any trouble with them. One guy, Old Ranger, he said he had it made him have a chain fire, and you know, I was like, man, we put hundreds of them through our pistols, you know, over the last few months, and man, I think we've only had one not fire.
Yeah, that's very similar to my experience. I haven't shot that many of them through it, but just because I'm lucky enough that I still have some caps, and I found a bunch the other day, thank God.
That's what I've always said. Snapper makes his own cap sometimes, so I always said if I ever get in that big of a bind and the world ends, I'm just gonna go find Snapper.
Yeah.
But Hardy Hat said, has anybody tried making historically accurate thick copper caps? Have any of you tried that?
I know they were thick. They were thicker cap. They were made out of a heavier stock material. And you could go to there was a guy for a while that had a device that's different than the one today. And like you go to the craft store and there'll be sheets of copper, sheets of brass, etc. He'd get the sheets of copper and punch out and make percussion caps out of those. But it was not cost effective because the price of the copper sheet was so expensive. That's one of the reasons you're using aluminum cans and things, because it isn't any better. It's holding the priming compound on top of the nipple for it to hit and go bang. You know.
I'm getting into this because I'm glad he asked that, because actually I got on this subject a couple nights ago because the channel Never Met a Gun I Didn't Like asked me a question about Colts, and I did something I'm guilty of doing something that I always tell people don't do. I gave him the easiest answer, and he said, what was the story on the military using cappers during the Civil War? And I gave him the easy answer, well, it didn't happen. And then I thought about it for a minute. I thought I'd better look in the book. And it's not a common thing, but I did discover that Colt made, of course, I knew they'd made cappers, but they made them for the Prussians, inline cappers. Colt made them. Colt made them for some people during the Civil War, especially for people that, not for the government, of course, but people were buying them. And I got to get a whole new book now because Stafford told me there's a book on it. And now I got to go get that book. I'm going to make a video on it.
That was one
The way I would do it if I was an officer. Go ahead.
That was one of the big money makers for Colt when he was doing the Dragoons. Was not only is he selling the Dragoons, but all the accoutrements. There was a capper, there was a mold, and there was a flask. And I think the early saddle, he provided all of that as well as the gun. So that was a big money maker. So there's got to be a Colt capping line.
Yeah, Colt made a capper forever. As a matter of fact, I even look at the cavalry arms and you see the people actually loading like while on horse. And the hardest part is capping the gun. By far the hardest part is capping the gun. And if you just use the capper, which doesn't make any sense to me why, if you were in the cavalry, you would see this thing and not utilize it. I'm sure that they were around. They have to be around because it was common sense.
Yeah.
It might not have been massive, but it was common sense.
It definitely happened, and we have lots of examples of Colt cappers.
Yep.
But the reason I brought that up is because we were talking about the different caps, the copper caps, and there's a video out there, a really good video by Duke Frazier, where he talks about cap jams in history. And there's two different kind of caps. There's a Remington cap and an Ely cap. And there's a couple others different too. But what they found was Colts contrary to popular belief, did not cap jam that bad during the Civil War. It wasn't as big a thing.
Exactly.
And there is a written document out there from, I can't remember his name, but it was a commander who talked about, we're using the Ely caps and getting along just fine, but when we get these Remington style caps that are made for the Remington revolver, the Colts are just cap jamming left and right. Well, the Remington style caps were made of a thinner stock, like you were just talking about, and surprisingly enough, the Remington style cap is what we still have today. And so if we had those original copper style caps, I think it would solve a lot of Colt cap jamming issues, in my opinion.
I think so too. I really believe so.
And you say the caps don't fit on your originals very well, huh, Snapper?
They do and they don't. It depends. A lot of the reasons, well, if I look at mine, my guns were used most of their life. So a lot of the times when I've gotten my guns, the nipples are worn out or they had to be
mushroomed a little bit.
Yeah, and so if they are mushroomed a little bit, they actually fit really well. But yeah, and another thing that I run into a lot is the flash hole has been deteriorated over time. So there's too much back pressure. And I've kind of gotten to the point now, I don't do it on my really high-end guns, but on the lower-end guns, being that the metric tap for Pietas, because you can get slick shots, I just retap it because you can actually go to a bigger size SAE later on if you wanted to. And I just run the slick shots in the smaller guns usually. Try with Pieta and go that route. But the originals, like the guns that still have their original nipples, like this Griswold and Gunnison, the Dragoon, all them, I usually have to crush the caps just a tiny bit to get them to stay on, and it's quite common to bang, bang, one's gone. It fell off. It's quite common.
I'll tell you what I noticed. On the original military guns, the 51 Navy, the 60 Army, you'll find that RWS 1075s fit them pretty well. But when you get down to the original pocket models, the 55, the 49, they seem to fit PCI number 10s, the smallest cap you can get, and you got to pinch them a little bit, but they seem to fit those little bitty CCI number 10 caps pretty good on those pocket models.
You know what was, speaking of the pocket
guys,
models,
I'm going to have to get off. I'm sorry, but my connection's getting real bad, and the wife texted me I've got to take care of something. I've really enjoyed being on, though.
Thank you for coming on. We're going to shut it down pretty soon anyway, but I sure appreciate you being here, Blackie. And he's gone.
But the pocket models, when I actually ordered a set of brand new nipples for the pocket model, Colt nipples, and they took like a cap size that I've never heard of. It was like a number 5, or I got to go look. It was like 7 or 5 or something. Never heard of it, and they don't make them anymore. So every single nipple that I could find that would actually original, I couldn't use.
That's too bad.
Yeah, that's why with that pocket model, I went to just, since I had to cut all the nipples out of the stupid thing, drill it, and tap all of them anyways, I just retapped them for Pieta nipples.
I think this is funny. We got the guy in the Southwest and the guy in the Southeast, and they can't stay on. Going in and out.
I'm going to get off, guys. I'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
But anyway, we're running a little longer than normal, but that's because the conversation's been so good. I think we'll go to an hour and 45 minutes if that's okay with you guys. That'll be another 6-7 minutes, unless you guys want to keep going after that. But
what state do you live in?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, none that you'd care to go to, I guarantee.
I'm guessing California.
No, I won't say it.
Okay.
You're actually probably pretty close to each other if you knew it. Would be my guess.
Okay.
Snapper, you want to say where you're at?
Las Vegas. No, I'm in Las Vegas, so the shithole, or sorry, my language. The crap of the world. Very pretty, but everything's fake.
So anyway, my questions, and I had a lot of them, and I needed to get to them earlier, but now we're at the end, and I need to get them out of there. Red cedar or desert willow? Is there that big of a difference?
No, don't use desert willow. Don't use desert willow.
Okay, you were using a Pacific willow. Sorry, because I watched your video, so I had that confused. Yeah, don't use it.
Yeah, we were confused on it for a while too.
You see, I got black willow.
there's not much measurable difference between Eastern red cedar or willow.
Okay.
Pacific willow, anyway. I don't know about all the willows. Apparently, there's a bunch.
Yeah. See, we have a standard black willow here, and I think it'll be all right. But of course,
That
I
would
haven't tried
probably
it
be
yet.
fine.
But so the desert willow is not a willow, or
No,
what's happening there?
No, and not being into
plants and
bushes and stuff. It's just like, well, they called it willow. It must be willow, but
Must
it's
be
not.
a willow.
Yeah, because that's funny. Eastern red cedar isn't cedar; it's juniper.
Yes, I've heard that. I've heard it's actually a juniper. I think. Right?
Yeah, and we're just covered up with them around here. Actually, we got a lot of willow and cedar, but we're just covered up with
That would
them.
work fine. Either one would work fine.
Yeah, and you're saying the dry method works just pretty well as good. Versus
Yes,
the
we haven't used the CIA method in well over a year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just didn't know if it's that, and you say it's not that measurable different. See, these are things I'm going to start next week. I just got done wiring the room because, well, I'll give you a little backstory here. It started out, of course, we shoot a pound a week some days because there's 5 of us running big smoothbores a lot of times. And so we were doing just fine before the pandemic. And then the pandemic came. Of course, we moved up to Swiss because, we got too good for that other stuff, I guess. But it was just cleaner. It was just cleaner. And so when pandemic came, of course, then it's like now we're rationed. And then we started shooting 2F and everything. And now we're shooting 1F and most stuff because, it's just hard to get. You got to hit it like once a year or 3F's not there.
Yeah.
So we're getting into it, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on here is because I know a lot of other people are getting into it too, and you're the only one brave enough to go out there and make a YouTube video about it almost. So have you faced any flack from YouTube over this, or?
No, not really. I mean, I don't know if you guys have to deal with this, but when I post a video, they automatically demonetize it, and I have to appeal it. But they always approve it after I appeal it. So, they must not be too upset about it.
Yeah, that's kind of the same way we are. I appeal everything like that. The appeal is, people out there might not understand, the appeal is completely different when it comes to strikes and warnings than it is to monetization. So you haven't had to deal with, like here lately, it's been the strike apocalypse for everybody, including us and Snapper.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't had to deal with that at all?
No, knock on wood.
Yeah, I just changed my name and I got a strike.
Really?
No joke. No joke. That's all that was at the video that I went from. I used to be called the Wild Snapper just because that was what my name was on YouTube. When I decided to make videos, they were like, you should have it more firearms related. So I just went to Snapper's Antique Firearms, right? And that's the only video, and I got a straight strike on it, and I lost the appeal.
They accused him of selling firearms, and it was a video that I don't even think it had a firearm in it.
At the very end, I said, oh, the Griswold's almost done because I was still working on it. I was like, I'm going to go shoot it soon. But that was it. All I said was, I'm changing my name. And by the way, this is almost done, so I'm going to go shoot it. That's it.
We got a warning, in which you get a warning, and then you get 3 strikes. Every strike you can't post or live stream for like a week, and 3 strikes, they take your channel. We got along real good. We got a warning, though, just a few weeks ago because my brother was shooting his 1777 Charleville. We got struck for a minor in a dangerous situation. He's not a minor. None of us are. Yeah, a minor in a dangerous using minors in your videos. Someone under 18. It's like we're not any of us under 18, but we appealed it. Automatic. It took like 5 minutes. Automatic. We reject you. I even wrote down the whole reason. I even offered to send his birth certificate in there to him. They were like, nope, you're not going to fight. You can't fight those appeals when it comes to that. It's just a machine, and it automatically just denies you, I think.
Everybody not look like a child and talk like a child if you're going to make videos.
Yeah. We have a beard.
Yeah, throw a beard.
I saw a video Mike Bellevue posted a week ago or something saying that that they're trying to kick him off. He's already he's had to appeal a bunch of stuff, and I thought like, this is just ridiculous. Who are these people? Like what's the issue? I'm not sure it's people at all. Like you said, it's the machine.
Yeah. Yep. And and Blackie and us were talking about, and I were talking about it before we started live, and we had the opinion that there is a pretty important court case coming down on whether or not they can censor these big YouTube and Google, Facebook can censor things, and they know it's coming down, and they know it's not going to come down their side. So I think they're literally throwing every strike at people that they possibly think they can get away with now, because it doesn't matter if they say you can't censor. You're never getting that strike off. You know, that's there. It's not leaving. So if they can give it to you now, they're going to. And yeah, I know AR American, he's on here all the time. He was just shut down for over a week because he showed a 1911 with a Bible scripture on the grip. Never even showed the whole gun, just the grip. I don't know why or when, but man, they hit him on that, struck him. And, you know, it's just everybody's getting it.
You know what a lot of it could be too is just the loudest wheel is the one that they freaking oil, you know? And so it could be one person that gets so butthurt about something and they just constantly report the channel over and over again. And that's probably what most of it actually is a very small, very small amount of people doing a lot of damage just because.
You know, I had one person leave me a comment on my stupid 40 grain black powder short, you know, and he was really, really upset, you know, about, you know, doing dangerous thing like compressing black powder. And he even told me, you know, I am reporting this video.
For compressing black powder.
I said, look, man, you know, this is how it's done, you know, blah, blah, blah. Nope, this is dangerous. You know, I hope they take your channel down. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Have a great thing, knock on wood, but.
You ever hear that paradox when the least you know about something, you actually think you know more?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of the problems on YouTube have. The more you learn something and you learn, like, I don't know anything about it, even if you could be the most knowledgeable person in the world, you still don't think you know enough about it. But I think that's the paradox that a lot of the YouTube lives in.
Yeah. Guys, we're over an hour, 45 minutes. If you guys aren't in a hurry, I got a few more questions, or you guys got to get going now.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, good. I'm going to keep going because this is some things I've been waiting to ask. And you changed your ball mill setup, and that was because of a commenter, or is it just because that was the next step in your evolution?
Well, yeah, somebody left me a comment about that, you know, saying that they were, you know, getting, I don't think they were making powder. I think they might have been turning musket balls or something, but they were getting black dust on it. And he was saying that, you know, you could actually, after you wash these jars out, you know, and you could actually, you know, rub them and they would leave black dust. And so that just kind of triggered, put us on a mission, you know, to try and get rid of anything that could be a contaminant. And then, you know, I was sitting there thinking about the, you know, the lead balls where we rub off the sprue and all that. And I thought, man, you know, we need to get rid of both of these things. You know, we need to get rid of the rubber jars. We need to get rid of the lead. And so my brother, you know, he says, you know, we could use ceramic, aluminum. Oh, man. He's probably watching this right now yelling at me because I don't remember what it is. But it's some kind of ceramic media. I want to say aluminum oxide, but I'm sure that's not right. So he bought the stuff, and we made that ball mill, and man, it made a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yep. I was wondering that because I saw, were you using marbles at one point, or was that someone else?
Yeah, we tried using marbles. In fact, I think we started off with using marbles, but I mean, it would take forever to mill it. It would take forever to mill it. Like, you know, with the old setup with the rubber jars and the lead media, it would take, you know, between 8 and 10 hours. With the marbles, it would take like 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But was it a better product, you thought, with the marbles, or?
Well, the issue was back then is we weren't corning it, so it still was pretty weak. But, you know, we were using more of it. You know, you're using, you know, 100 grains if you want to use 60 or 70. So you're burning more of it at the same time. So we really didn't notice it being much cleaner. But at the time, we were mostly just excited. It's just like, hey, look, we did this and it works.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's kind of why I'm appreciate you so much, because I feel like when I jump into it here in the next week or so, I feel like I'm about 3 years ahead of what everybody else will be, because I'm watching your evolution going through it, and I know that you've been at this for a long time. And okay, another thing on here, another subject. No sulfur. Is that even? I mean, I know I've seen your video on it. A no sulfur powder. Would it ever actually be viable? Is it dirtier? What's your opinion?
No, and this is something I messed up with this, because it actually burned really, really clean. And
really?
I neglected to mention that in the video entirely, which was my fault. But it actually, out of all the powders we've tried, it burned really, really clean. But it was inconsistent and it was weak. But if you're using it in a muzzle loader, it's totally doable. It's totally viable. It's in a pistol, something where you have limited case capacity, is where it's not really worth the trouble. But if you remember in the video, I said I would be climbing down a volcano to get some sulfur because it makes that big of a difference.
Yeah. You still stand with that, do you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is because I always get these questions. I made a video on it. You saw it because you commented on End of the World. Not that I say it's going to happen, but should it happen, everybody's running out and buying a 9mm or an AR. I'm like, yeah, you might fight somebody once or twice in your entire life, and you do need those things. But for day-to-day use, you're going to want something like I believe even you agreed in the comments. Good smoothbore flintlock's really hard to beat. And there won't, if that situation comes, there won't be any sulfur. So I had some people asking me about that, and I referred them to your video. But I'm glad to hear that it actually burns clean.
Yes,
and it is usable. You're not going to be using a pistol that much in that situation anyway.
Right.
So I think it's a Turkey Creek 1823 is in here, and I got to get him on the show sometime. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, go check it out. A lot of muzzleloading mountain man stuff. He said Ben Hoffman at Hoffman Reproductions had the same comment and has since modified his ball mill. Yeah, I saw that. I think he ran aluminum inside of the rubber.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, I talked to Ben often. We're on the same page with all this stuff.
I noticed that. I noticed that you guys have worked together, really have improved the homemade black powder videos. Because before it was always somebody in their garage. Well, this is, and half the time, they wouldn't even be milling it. They'd be sifting it in a Tupperware dish. And then they'd be like, they'd hold a match to it and it'd take 10 seconds to go 3 inches, and they're, this is great black powder. And I'm like, dude, Pyrodex goes better than that, And so I am grateful you guys got out there and did that, because it definitely is needed, especially nowadays.
Yeah, I've learned more about black powder just watching your channel than I knew at all before.
Because I think our channel single-handedly funds Grafton Son. We need to get away from that a little bit. It's pretty expensive.
What's kind of interesting, though, is the idea of that a lot of that dirtiness is coming from either the lead or the rubber. Lead powder is the dangerous form of lead, like to breathe in. And even though I'm a kid who definitely is his share of lead paint, but I don't see if there was ever a real scare of lead, that's what would be worrying. And then you're also combusting it and burning it right in front of your face.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's actually pretty awesome. I'm going to have to give that a shot too, because that's exactly how I'm milling mine. I'm using the Harbor Freight little 2 chamber mill and lead ball. And I definitely should build a custom grade.
Turkey Creek 1823. If you're still out there, comment and let me know how so I know you were starting a journey of making your own powder a year ago or so, and I'd like to know how that went for you. If you're still out there, give me a comment on that. But Franklin Horse asked Jake, did you say you'd mill dry?
Yes.
And you just mill all the ingredients together. I've heard everybody under the sun say that's a bad idea, but you haven't seemed to have any issues yet.
Not yet.
Do you stick with the normal ratio? I don't know if we should say the ratio. I mean, you said on your show, right?
I'm not. Yes. It's not going to hurt nothing.
70, 17-5, 15-10. Is that what the ratio you stick with?
No, I've run 77-13-10 for quite some time now.
So you're noticing a much better out of that then?
It's more powerful.
Okay.
You'll get better velocities from 77, 13, 10. And that's just our experience. You know, I have people tell me all the time, like, oh no, you know, you need to do 79, 11, 12 and all this stuff. And we've done a lot of experiments with different ratios and stuff, and in every direction. We've tried, you know, more sulfur, less sulfur, all that stuff. And the best ratio, regardless of charcoal, is that we've tried 77, 13, 10.
Sweet, thanks. I'm gonna have to give that a shot because I don't remember. I'm sure I probably would have saw it on one of your videos, but I just didn't remember it. And almost everything I have is 75, 13, or 15, 10.
Yeah, the stuff we were shooting today was 75, 15, 10, and you know, and it works fine. Still, you know, because I chronoed a couple shots through my rifle today, and it still was in the mid 1500s, so it didn't magically get any better over the last couple weeks that it's been sitting in the, you know, in the can.
But I mean, if you're making it, might as well make it as best you can.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we were talking about it today, my brother and I, and one of our buddies says, well, you know, it's just as long as it's up to your standards. And my brother says, yeah, well, we have pretty high standards. And he twists thing and shakes it, you know.
When I first started making black powder, I absolutely didn't like it at all because I was like, this is dramatically weaker than GoX. And it was just because the corning made the world of difference. I mean, that was, to me, the biggest difference of all. It really made it, you know, the stuff I'm making feel more like GoX at least.
Right.
I'm not that good yet, but the stuff I'm making feels like GoX at least. Before it felt like wet GoX. But yeah.
I tell people all the time, it's just like, you know, well, you know, I screen my powder. Look, man, you really should corn it. Oh, well, you know, yeah, but this works okay. Look, just try it because it is really a game changer.
It's worth the investment. If you don't have any of the stuff to corn it, just buy it. It's worth the investment.
Well,
I was about to say, I just forked over my $150 for a pucking die.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they're not cheap.
The way Ben Hoffman corns his is he cut out some pieces of wood on a wood lathe, and he uses a bench vise.
Yep.
Which, you know,
I never noticed that.
Super ideal, but any compression is going to be better than just light and fluffy sifted powder.
Yeah.
Franklin Horse over here has a question.
A way of over compression?
Answer it. A question right quick. He said, how was it done traditionally? You got any idea on that?
You know, Brett from Paper Cartridges has a lot of the powder history and stuff because he's big military historian stuff when it comes to that stuff. And he's got a couple of videos on it, and he could go into way better, cleaner detail than I can. As far as I know, they didn't start making corned powder until I think the 1850s. So they were still making screened powder all the way up until then. And it wasn't until then that they started corning it and compressing it and making what they call press cakes. And I think it was the British that started it too.
Yeah.
When things really changed, and that was the powder that we've been using, you know, until they quit using black powder. But Brett from Paper Cartridges has a video about the entire history of black powder as far as military stuff goes. It's an excellent video.
I don't know a lot on it, but I studied quite a bit during like French and Indian War era and things. When you get to the Brown Bess and the Charleville, because we have both of those guns, and the two boys that have them are always going head to head. But the Charleville and the Brown Bess, you know, they start coming out in like 1710, 1720, the original style of the gun. And at that point, France had better powder. And it was because they were already using willow. I'm not sure what Britain was using, but it wasn't as good. You get into the Napoleonic Wars and a little beyond that, and Britain just, their powder gets so much better, so faster. But the idea was the Brown Bess had the bigger bore to begin with because their powder wasn't as good and it was fouling out faster. So they were using a smaller bore projectile and a bigger bore, whereas France was already on to willow charcoal, and they were be able to load they had, I believe it's a 69 caliber gun, and they're loading a 65 caliber ball. So they're using less lead, you know, but it's still actually probably a little more accurate because there's, you know, less room in the barrel. But yeah, I've heard that. I didn't know if you knew anything about that.
Just from what I've seen on Brett's video, and I think he mentions too that I think the British switched to alder buckthorn around that, well, maybe a little around that time. And that's
around the Revolutionary War. Yeah.
their quality of their stuff was way better.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Early on, when they first developed the guns, the French were just so much better, and then there came a point where the British changed and just their powder was just the best powder in the world after that.
Yep.
And that's what I've heard. There's a couple questions here I saw. Ever thought about the production of potassium?
You know, my brother and I have talked about that a little bit, like making our own or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's at this point it's cheap and easy to buy, so we're not really too interested in trying to grow it.
Yeah, and you see, it's not that hard here because we got cattle pens and stuff in ground that actually put saltpeter out where you can't grow anything. Yeah. And some of it is, and so I don't know how hard it would be for us to do. I didn't look into it, but I think when you got cattle pens and stuff like that, it'd be a little easier. I don't know. Could be. What about Snapper? You made your own powder, and we discussed this because you loaded a 22 short with your powder that didn't penetrate a plastic trash can.
Oh yeah, let's not go into that one. But yeah, it's before I started corning it. I filled the entire because I have a little Remington Iroquois, and so I got the 22. It was a 22 short case, and I have long cases now, but I just shoved as much of the black powder in as I could, and then stuck it's a 22 caliber round ball basically, and I stuck that on top and pressed it a little bit in the vise and stuck it in the little gun. It didn't even make a hole in the plastic trash can 5 feet away. I was so upset. I was like, oh no.
And I think you said that on a 25 grain charge, you were getting 19 grains or something like that when you weren't pucking it or you weren't corning it, right? So it's like that much later. You got to realize a 22 short only holds 3 grains to start with.
Right.
So you were down at like 2 grains or something like that.
I don't know why, but like, because I get people asking me like, oh, you should do, black powder fill in the blank cartridge, and I get people asking me to do black powder 22 often.
That's historic.
And, it's like, what, I don't even know what I need to do what do I need to buy to make that happen? Like, I don't even know.
We shoot a lot of it because we shoot, if you didn't know, we have historic, basically documentary series on the Colt and the Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson came in and their first cartridge for the #1 was a case that was a 22 short rimfire with 3 grains of black powder and a round ball. And so that's really easy to do. You just go buy pure soft lead, a 22 caliber air gun round balls, and you just put 3 grains of 4F in there because it works. And, it's not terrible, especially with 4F Swiss, but, it's not something you'd want to take to war. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet if I had some really high quality black powder, it might have made it through the trash can. But it was a normal, just like big plastic trash can you take to your curb kind of thing, and it didn't even. I couldn't even tell where it hit.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a point where I was like maybe 3 feet away from it to make sure I wasn't missing for some crazy reason. And
I think you have to go back and watch, but we actually had a chronograph back then, and I think we chronographed that. With the 4F, we chronographed it at 400 feet per second at 22 caliber ball, and it made it 3 inches into ballistics gel.
Wow!
So it's not the end of the world terrible, but that's
not. So
it's gonna hurt somebody, but
you would like it.
Hurt that trash can.
Like you didn't hurt. That's because you didn't have the.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't hurt myself. For my luck, it would have ricocheted back on me. But I was pretty upset that it could even puncture a trash can. But
because. We had a war going on basically between my brothers and I. I was Colt. My brother was Smith & Wesson's. I had a 49 pocket model out. He had the Smith & Wesson #1. And before we even tested it, he's like, I think this will do something. I did a 49 pocket model with 13 grains of 4F, and it was not even close to comparable.
Yeah, I bet.
Especially with a conical. The little pocket model with a conical is actually a pretty decent little gun. It
really does.
More powerful than you would expect.
So I seen on your videos, Jake, that you were dumping your powder back in. The powder, I'm going to say powder, the fine powder back in. You weren't using that to prime your pan? You dump it back in and remake it.
No, I get asked about this a lot, and I don't know why it bothers people, but that right there is, well, that makes some really fine, priming powder. Right? Yeah, you totally could do that, but we always just throw it back in unless it's a different batch or something that we're changing, because we do a lot of tests and stuff. But I make a habit of priming with whatever powder that I'm charging with.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
You guys were saying you shoot 1F. I don't think I've ever tried 1F.
Yeah.
I have some 1.5 stuff that I was using for my 10 gauge shot shell loads, but I've never used it in any muzzle loader. The coarsest stuff I've ever used is 2F, and you can still prime with 2F. It works just fine.
Well, if you ever, and the only reason you do that is especially mainly for the brown bess and bigger, is because you can get, you fill that area up more without so much pressure. You get that, you fill that up better and get it. I don't know what it is, but it seems to hit that ball just right. But if you ever get a chance, get out there with some of your 1F and get you a 200 grain charge. You won't want to do it more than once or twice probably in that brown bess, but it'll really put it down range. And it's actually, there's some historical 200 grain paper cartridges where they were allowing 20 grains for priming because they knew you were going to spill some. So it technically would be a 180 grain charge. Like you said, that was before they were corning the powder. So that makes a difference. But, it doesn't hurt any of the guns we've shot. It really does put it out there. But like you said, you can't prime very well with 1F. So that's why we always use the priming horns. What I was thinking was you weren't doing it because of how fine that stuff is. It's finer than 4F, what it looked like.
Oh, yeah, it's like dust.
And I imagine it would pick up moisture like crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure it would. Not that we have to worry about that too much out here, but it just, even with like the mill powder, if you light some off on the floor, it'll flash pretty fast. It's faster once it's corned and granulated.
Mm-hmm.
It is faster, and I know people like to say I grind my stuff up and use it. That's fine if that's what works for you, but I personally prefer granulated powder over the dust.
Yeah. Are you using a coffee grinder to get your sizes?
No, it's a grain grinder. I don't know. I bought it on Amazon. You mean like to sift out my sizes?
Yeah, I mean, I know you use screens, but a guy suggested to me to get an old-fashioned crank coffee grinder, and that's what I did to cut down to. Supposedly, the idea was if you want more 3F, you set it to 3F and get more 3F, or vice versa.
If you watch it, it's the same thing. I sent you a video. It looks like a coffee grinder, but it's meant for corn. Like, I think it's meant for grain or corn itself. It looks just like the one you have, Josh.
Yeah, no, this guy actually suggested this coffee grinder to me, and I got it. So I didn't know if you were using that or not.
No, the grain grinder I have, it has a thing where you could loosen it up or tighten it up, to change the distance between those wheels. And typically what we do is, we bust up those things, and most of the time they're hard enough where I have to hit them with a punch and a hammer to break them.
Yeah.
And that's something I tell people, they're like, well, I corn my powder, but I could still, it's not hard enough. You need to compress it more. But so we bust them up into big pieces and we throw them in this thing and we open it up some and we run it through and we catch it and then we sift it. And we just do that until we get whatever size we want, and sift out the dust and the big chunks or whatever. And,
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I bought the identical thing that you're using. I just looked on Amazon until I found the exact one that looked like the one you're using.
Yeah. Well, I know what you're using, Snapper, and that's an old a corn sheller. You throw corn
whatever that's what. Yeah, and on the end it has a little like nut kind of thing, and it's just two little plates that rotate against each other when you're turning the wheel, and you can adjust how close those plates are.
Yeah. Okay, because that's something I was going to ask. I haven't seen this described in videos, but we talk about letting those pucks dry. Are you letting them dry in the die under pressure?
No.
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about.
They come right out of the die and wet?
Yes. And well, they're hard as a rock, even right out of the die.
Okay.
But we still let them sit for, at least a few days. And there's some debate over this. Like I think Brett said that the British would let them sit for months or years or something to make sure they were nice and dried. But we don't have that kind of time. So we let them sit for a couple of days and we break them up and just go from there. But we can tell when we're grinding up the thing, we're putting the chunks in there, we're grinding it and it's coming out. And if I can shake that thing around and it's not clumping together, it's plenty dry. If you're if you're turning that wheel and you're looking in your thing where you're catching all your flakes, all your powder, and you shake it around, it's kind of clumped up, it's still a little wet. It's not the end of the world. It'll still work fine, but it's still a little wet.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of putting it in a dehumidifier? Or like the thing people make jerky out of, that thing?
What we're planning on doing, we haven't done this yet, but I was talking to my brother about this yesterday with the latest batch that we're making, and I said, because he has a vacuum chamber with desiccant. And I said, okay. I says, when we get these pucks made, I says, once you take them home and vacuum them, and we'll leave them sit overnight, and it'll suck the moisture right out of it, and we'll let them sit like that for a few days, and then we'll grind them up. So that's what we were planning on doing.
Did I end up giving you that idea since I hooked up my stuff to my vacuum chamber and sucked out all those? I used a mason jar and I hooked it up to a vacuum chamber they have for air conditioning for working on cars from my old shop. And I just put a vacuum on the black powder and I figured vacuum all the moisture would boil off and go into and out. And I figured that's probably the best way to store the powder as well, under vacuum, because then it could never get moisture in it.
Well, let me tell you this, and this is something that we have experimented with, is we did this with the sodium nitrate powder, or some of the sodium nitrate powder that we made. And I don't know if it was just with the sodium nitrate powder or if it'll do it with black powder as well. But we had some that was already corned and ready to go, and we were going to go shooting on Saturday. And my brother says, hey, give me the rest of that. I'll put it in my, because we were worried about it because sodium is a lot more hygroscopic than potassium nitrate is. Yeah. And we didn't want it to get wet. And so he says, hey, let me have that powder. I'll put it in my vacuum chamber and we'll just leave it sit till we go shooting next weekend. I said, okay, great. And we went out the next weekend and it really was weird because it was so dry that one, it lost about 200 feet per second worth of velocity. And the thing was like dirt. I mean, like dust. It was really, really strange. Like I would run my patch down there and I'm pulling it up and it's jittering and like dust and stuff is coming out. I mean, it was really, really bizarre.
So I'm sure it needs some kind of a moisture content.
It needs some kind of moisture, and if it can be too dry to where it doesn't work well.
Huh. That is interesting.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Yeah, Constitutional Carpenter said a Catalina grain grinder for corner wheat, ? Is that kind of, I think that's what that is. I've seen them, I just call them corn shellers, but I think it's like exactly what it is.
30-something bucks off Amazon, aluminum little hand crank grinder.
Yeah, grain grinder or whatever they call it.
Yeah, it was like 30 bucks off Amazon.
Yeah, pretty cheap. That's what I bought mine.
Until I broke the handle because I dropped the stupid thing. But don't break the handle.
We talked about, and I've talked to him about this before, but prilled, because a lot of the potassium nitrate that we find, especially like for us who are farming, we get, it says it's 99.8% pure, but it's prilled, and it says cubed in parentheses there. You said that might, in 99.8, do you need to refine that or what?
Now, I asked my brother about this. I says, what's with the prilled? Because our stuff says prilled. And he says, well, what's he doing? I says, well, he says it's farm stuff. And he says, oh, yeah, he should, he should recrystallize it, in case there's anything. But if it's technical grade stuff and it's 99.9 or whatever, it should be fine.
See, I didn't know that's something. I see technical grade, and I don't know what that is. I mean, we deal with the stuff all the time. But usually we're dissolving it in water and making a moisture fertilizer out of it, and some people do it dry too. But it says prilled, and I didn't understand because I went through your videos and I saw where you did the sodium nitrate.
Yeah,
you had a tag that looked
right
a lot like
it.
it that said prilled, and I was like, oh, maybe he's, and I assume that's what you're grinding up in your bullet beforehand. Is that what the deal is?
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually spent the last couple of weeks going through a lot of you guys' videos, you and Hoffman, and I saw that you went with Skylighter. And so I went to Skylighter for the sulfur. And you pretty happy with them?
Yeah. I used up a whole batch of their stuff. I think the stuff we're using now is Duda, D-U-D-A.
Mm-hmm.
But, it works fine too.
Okay.
I think that might be who I'm using.
I
Like
noticed
Diesel Brothers or some weird name like that.
Skylighter was a couple of dollars a pound more expensive, but it looked like it might be worth it just because I don't know what I'm getting into, to be honest. Like, I know what the stuff is, but it's like when you start seeing things like 12, 12, 12, how do we, or KNO3, I get, but 12, 12, 12, and all these different farm potassium nitrates that have all kinds of different stuff in them. And you're like, I don't think that'll work. Or the sulfur I thought about using turned out to be a 90% sulfur, and I don't know if you've tried that. That's bad, I think.
Yeah, that's bad. You will get bad black powder from that. And I've had people say that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, well, I got the sulfur stuff, from the hardware store, and it's like, well, what is it? Well, it's 90%. Yeah, that's bad, because the other 10% is chalk or something.
Yeah, and that's why I saw you were going with the Skylighter, and I thought, I don't know the answer, so I'm going to go with the purest stuff I can find. Yeah. And I think that stuff was pretty pure.
Yeah, if you have good quality material, KNO3, charcoal, and sulfur, you will get good powder. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Regardless of how long you have to mill it for, if you're using good materials and you don't fat finger the ratio, you will get good black powder.
Okay, that's good. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have this chat, because I knew I couldn't get all these answers in comments very quickly. But I appreciate you saying that and letting us know that. I really don't have a lot else on the black powder stuff that I wanted to know, other than when we work around, say, some of them, I have some experience working around elevators and things where dust is combustible. Do you think that black powder dust is combustible?
I suppose technically it would be, but I've never seen anything bad happen, knock on wood, and I've gotten plenty of comments from people about that kind of stuff, but I mean, where I make it, it's pretty open, and even, you've probably seen it in the videos, it's like, it's pretty open. And, every other week or so, we sweep everything up and hose out the shop floor anyway. So, yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, I suppose it's dangerous, but, what is it?
Well, the thing is, we're renovating a little building right now because, I mean, we're casting, 3 or 4 days a week. We're casting lead and reloading. And so we needed a little better spot in the garage. So we're renovating a building. And the question came up, should we use a fluorescent light or an LED light in case we get dust up in there? And I don't know if that's, it's just the thing you think about. Should a standard light bulb explode? Would it set it off? I don't know. But, that's just a question I had if you ever tried that in any way. It would have to be a lot of dust, I get. It'd be interesting to try it in like a small contained area full of dust and see if it would light.
That would be something to try. Just make a bunch of dust in something, and see if you can't light it off. But, there's always people that tell me this kind of stuff. I get comments like this often, where, and it usually goes something like this, well, when I was a kid, there was, one of the neighbor kids, down the street was making black powder, and it took out his house. Everybody, all the dogs and cats, took out the whole city block. They had the CIA, the FBI out there, and the Men in Black and everything, and to which I usually respond like, are you sure it wasn't a meth lab?
Yeah, he had a 50-gallon drum for a ball mill and was cranking out, 280 pounds at once. Or what?
It's like either DuPont or GoEx has a secret facility in this guy's basement, or something else is going on.
Oh, I love it. Because Snapper and I get this all the time on the antique stuff. We always get this stuff, because we believe you should load 5 in your single action army, put it on an empty. We will say that. But we don't go against anybody who uses a safety notch on a 4-click hammer, and I'm sure you know about that. But we get this kind of stuff all the time, like somebody's gun fell off the dash and it hit the floorboard, and it hit that floorboard hard enough to bust that safety notch. Or, there's just always kinds of stuff like that. So Snapper,
it's always their roommates, best friends, former grandfathers,
Yes.
principal whose girlfriend's brother's aunt knew the guy. So
Yeah, former roommate.
it's like,
yeah.
I'm sure.
And so Snapper got to where we get these questions. He'd take it to spectre analysis, and he's like, "You do realize it would require 15 feet, drop straight on the hammer
On the concrete.
Yeah.
I'm
You're on
not-
the
I'm
top
not
of
saying
a
it's
story
not.
building, right?
But it
It's
didn't
like they
happen.
brought his dash. Is that
Everybody.
tall? That's a big car. Yeah, that's actually becoming my favorite thing to do on YouTube is look at the myths that everybody knows that that's so bad, don't do it, and then you go through it and you're like, there's nothing here. Like, it probably happened once because it had a defaulty part, and it's almost like the whole Beretta argument in the Army when the Beretta 92 FS came out, the M9. They had like one that failed and hurt a person, like the slide or something. And the entire time I was in the military, all you heard is, oh, they fail all the time, and you've met a million people, but I've never met him, but I knew of a guy who met the guy, and it only happened one time ever in testing. It never happened over the wider Army, and yet everybody and the brother has a story about it.
Yep.
It's
Unknown out there in the channel. I know those guys, they'd love to help you with this, but they can't. And we can't either because we live in I know you live in a different country, but even though we live in a free country, we could get removed from the internet for helping somebody in another country build a firearm that they're not allowed to have. There's ways to do it. You need to be looking up a paper trail, look in a book, look something like that up. But yeah, a lot of these guys, they really can't help you, especially if they have a YouTube channel. Build a firearm. It's just too dangerous. We've got a lot of time and effort wrapped up in these channels, and even I know a lot of the guys in the comments do too. And it's just way too easy to lose your channel now. So they're not ignoring you, I promise.
We built a small empire for some of us, and I would sure hate to lose out to go to jail just because I helped somebody.
Yeah. There's a question out here. Johnny V online said, okay, yeah, that's a good question, and I think you're going to give the answer here. He said, can you sell what you're making in separate bags, or does it not work due to laws?
It's like
I don't know.
Selling black powder that
No.
you make yourself. Yeah, I wouldn't.
I think you would have to have a license to do so because it's considered an explosive.
Right.
You could make it and you could store it under, but I think you're only allowed to have like 50 pounds of it at one time.
right.
Yeah.
But I bet you if you like people like Hoffman, where you could sell you all the stuff you need to make it yourself, that's legal. But I don't think they could sell you the powder without actually having a firearms license, an explosive license, hazmat, all that other crazy stuff.
You can have the three components in separate bags in the same box. That's fine. But
Right.
as soon as you mix them together, now you have a problem.
Yeah. That's the same reason you pay so much money for shipping when it is turned into it, buying it from whoever you buy it from. That's why that hazmat fee.
Yeah. Brass 762 said around here it's artillery shells people play with, not black powder. In the 50s, someone threw a 75 millimeter into the fire at a kid's birthday party and killed a few kids. Yeah, we're not saying you shouldn't be safe. We're just saying don't be afraid to step out and try something. That is what I think everybody here is saying.
Yeah, I would say also don't play with artillery shells if they actually
Yeah,
have to use it.
that's a whole different ballgame than black
That's
powder.
a whole different ballgame, brother.
Yep. That's about where we're at. So anyway, guys, we've been running for 2 hours and 23 minutes. I'm going to shut it down officially at 2 hours and 30 minutes. So if you got any more questions, get them in there as soon as you can. There were some I know we missed a lot. Guys, this has been our biggest chat since Alec Baldwin.
Oh, wow.
So I'm pretty proud of that. And that's because, of course, we had two really big stars in here tonight. And I'm between Blackie and everything Black Powder. And I'm really glad that they showed up here on our channel. I've been just excited for this as I can be because a lot of information out there.
Yeah, especially I've been watching your channel for a while. It's really nice to finally actually meet you, except through, other than comments.
You too, man.
Mr. Somebody said, do you measure your ratios by weight or by volume?
Wait.
Yep.
Wait.
Let's see. Soylent Green said, always fun. Stephen M said it requires a little common sense. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, the not so common sense, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't suggest making 5 pounds at once, probably, but I don't know anything about it. But that's just my idea. So you cap it at 200 grains or 200 grams. Sorry, right? Is that what your deal is?
Yes.
And yeah, it's
And
gonna take you a while.
we feel a little bit better about that too. Now that we don't have anything really holding it all together with it, we just have that rubber cap, pushed on there. So
Yeah. Yeah, and it's gonna do just like if you lit it on the sidewalk. It might give you a little pop, but it's gonna be like a jet engine.
Yeah, it'll blow a bunch of fire out the top there, and it'll look cool, make a bunch of smoke, and But I tell people all the time, if you're gonna make black powder, you need to make your powder as safely as you see fit.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, they can't do it and feel comfortable, and so then the answer is to just don't do it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And most people aren't going to use it in the volumes that us three here use it. Because I know when you're making videos every week, and I know you make even more than that, and you're feeding 5 or 6 people, at the same time. Man, we go through it like all my cans there are empty, and I don't have very many in here because I don't like to store too much in one place. But
yeah, I thought I burned a lot of black powder. We burn about 1 pound a week, but you're doing more than that.
About that, and maybe a little more. You got to realize, like on Sunday afternoon when we get together, there's 5 brothers, all of us shooting big bore, smooth bores, and we will burn at least. Sometimes, like on 4th of July, we'll burn a pound of powder each that day.
Yeah,
you can always tell when they shoot. Just watch the Weather Channel in Kansas, and if you see a bunch of cloudy area, that's where they're shooting.
Yeah, but yeah, and it's not. I guess it's not like that every week, but there's times when the weather's nice. We're gonna burn a lot of powder, and so that's why we do it. And so maybe it's not there. I noticed there's an upfront cost here that's substantial. When you talk about you got to get your ball mill, you got to get your ingredients, you got to there's a lot of things you need to press. A pucking die. I was blown away with how expensive that pucking die was, but the upfront cost might be prohibitive to some people. You kind of did yours over time though, so it's like a little bit at a time, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I've tried a couple different pucking dies, and the cost of the mill or the ball mill jar was not all that much, but
yeah,
because people ask me all the time too. It's just like, I don't understand why you jump through all these hoops to have just to make black powder. Well, look, when you burn as much powder as we do, and you're into it as much as we are, that's fine if you can get the powder.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't been able to buy 3F Swiss in probably a year or close to it. There just isn't any out there.
Yeah.
So it's like I burn a lot of powder, so we make it. And yeah, it's a dirty job, and it takes time and effort. But you know what? I can go shooting, and other people can't.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I think it's also dramatically cheaper than buying.
Yeah, very much.
Dramatically cheaper.
If you've moved up to Swiss, you're spending $33, $34, especially like we buy in bulk so that we can kind of negate that big hazard fee, but you're still paying $33 a pound, which I did the addition on this, and it might be $6 a pound, maybe for the really good stuff. Like I said, using that Starlighter stuff. If you were buying your own potassium nitrate and everything, might be like $6 a pound
with no hazardous fee. It's great.
Yep. And
the last time my brother bought a batch of potassium nitrate, I think he got 10 pounds or something, and it was $5 a pound.
Yeah,
I think that's about how much I'm paying for the potassium nitrate I bought. It was like 10 or 15 pounds from the internet, and it was only like 10, 15 bucks. It wasn't that expensive.
So, you can still make good powder for $6 a pound.
Yeah.
Stephen M said I had a Remington repo, but we can cover that some other time. Yeah, that's going to be a whole chat all of its own someday when we get the actual original Snapper's original Remingtons out against the modern replica Remingtons, and you're going to be probably saddened to find out that the originals might not be as good as the replicas.
We'll stick to that one for the chat when it gets there. Let's just say, yeah,
we don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. Okay, guys, we're gonna get ready to shut it down here. I got these few questions, and then we're done. Grey Wolf said, I missed your last Mountain Man chat. Well, it's still up there. And I want to discuss the post-Civil War era with you and him. I had a portrayal of the mountains kids press north to avoid civilization. That'd be kind of cool. Grey Wolf said, can a guy with a lathe make you a decent pucking die?
Yeah, that's what I did because I broke the pucking die I bought.
But to be
I
honest,
decided to just put a little extra grumph into it, and I kind of blew it out. And then it was really hard to get the powder through it, so I just turned one on my lathe, made it out of decent quality steel.
But the thing is, we actually have we have access to a shop lathe, a really high quality shop lathe. But in reality, I said it costs like $140 or whatever. In reality, you count your time and the steel and everything to make a good one. It's not much cheaper once you count your time up to make one.
Especially high quality steel. High quality steel can get really expensive really fast.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you might save yourself $20 or $30, but who has the time?
Yeah.
So, Brent V said, I got 6 months ago, I got Swiss from Grafton Son, and they have shooting in stock now. Keep that a secret, though. Well, yeah, I know. There's about a week in June you can get everything you want because it all comes in, and then it's gone.
Yep.
Well, I was lucky enough when I was in Nevada or Arizona recently. I bought almost 2,000 caps just because they were there. I finally found caps. Now, they're not the Remingtons or the CCIs, but they're caps.
Yep. Soylent Green said, if 11 Bang Bang ever gets taken over or taken down, basically, are you guys on another platform or you have any social media pages? I don't. My brother does, but we do. We are on Rumble under 11 Bang Bang 2. And all our videos that come out here actually come out 30 minutes sooner every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock on Rumble. And I'll just tell you, do you guys, either of you have a Rumble yet?
No.
I've been making a account just because I wanted to make my own channel and transfer it there as well. It's
great because you have so much freedom, and there's like the copyright laws are not nearly as enforced and everything's great, but it is such a nightmare to answer comments. Comments come through your email. And so and they could do a lot of things over there to make that a lot better. Yet it's really hard as a creator. I mean, I'm getting used to it, but it's not near as easy as YouTube. But yes, we are over there on Rumble. And if you're actually on Rumble, you'll see our videos on Sunday morning 30 minutes sooner than people on YouTube will. That's about all we got, guys. We went 2.5 hours. That's really good. We had over 70 people. We had 80 people in here at one point. And like I said, that's our biggest live chat ever outside of that one Alec Baldwin. And I want to thank Jake down here, and I want to thank Snapper for coming on here. And we are going to do what we do at the end of every video. We're going to go down here and ask, what is Everything Black Powder's next video going to be about, if you don't mind my asking?
Black Powder 38 Long Colt.
Hey, there you go. That'll be awesome to see for us 38 conversion shooters. All right, Snapper, here we are. What's the next video?
Well, it's still been a year, and the Griswold and Gunnison video should be out soon.
You put a video out recently. I was proud of you.
I know. Well, what it is, I finally got home. Even when I was gone, I made a video just because I wanted to escape the situation for a while. So it's probably going to be something on the 1877. I finally got some ammo loaded onto it. I'm praying I can get to the range before I have to go back to Arizona. But if you don't see anything within the next 5 or 6 days, it probably won't be another month or so before I can get anything out.
Yep.
So,
all right, guys. Here on 11 Bang Bang, tune in tomorrow morning at 7:30. We'll be visiting the Pieta bunt line, and we'll be putting some 40 grain bullets or 40 grain loads through that too. So just for the fun of it. Anyway, other than that, I got one more announcement, guys. We're at 4,906 subscribers. It's taken us a long time to get this far, but we're growing pretty fast now. So in 2 weeks from tonight, if we hit 5,000 by then, which I'm pretty sure we will, we're going to have a big giveaway and a very special guest. It'll be a surprise guest. And we're going to be giving away 3 prizes. Third place will be a hat, 11 Bang Bang hat. Second place will be your choice of a Duke Fraser production holster. Whatever you want him to make, he'll make it for you on us. First place will be a brand new Pieta 1851 Navy. And so I'll have instructions on how you can win that coming up in the next few weeks. But you guys, if you like and share our videos, and of course these guys too, both these guys and Blackie, their channels are in the description if you want to go over there and subscribe, which I'm sure almost all of you already have. But yeah, if you guys want to help us out there, share our videos, help us get to 5,000 by the next 2 weeks, we will have a big giveaway, a special guest, and a really big stream 2 weeks from now. Anyway, that's all we got, guys. You guys got anything else to say? All right.
Congratulations on being where I hope you get to 5,000. I love, I'm so glad to finally be back on this co-hosting. I'm just so glad to be back co-hosting, man. I missed it a lot.
Well, we're glad to have you back. Trust in God and keep your powder dry. Bye.